I've read studies and books, and I know you're wrong. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, man.
Okay, so black came into popular usage in the 1960s. It was actually the Nation of Islam that popularized it. Prior to that, black people were called Negroes.
Okay.
Okay, so when I say
that tells me that you're not educated. I'm sorry.
No, what I say, you know more about my history than I do?
Yeah, it sounds like it, man. It just sounds like you haven't read any books or you don't know anything, man. I'm sorry. It's all right, man.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
My buddy HasanABI, how's it going, dude? How you doing, man? You stepped into a killer conversation, man.
All right, hold on.
I'm gonna clear what's really happening.
Hold on, Cormatina. Hold on. What's up, Hassan? How you doing? What's up?
I'm doing all right. I heard we were talking once again about the N-words, and I was like, this is it. We haven't talked about it enough, so I'm glad that this conversation's happening.
Thank God.
Yeah.
You excited to talk about some gamer words tonight, Hassan?
Sure. I honestly, I feel like I'm a little worried that I'm going to go over some stuff or I'm going to ask some questions that have already been asked because, you know, we've endlessly deliberated on this. So I apologize, but can I ask Destiny a couple questions about this, or is that okay with everybody else?
The first question you asked is how you've been doing, because I haven't seen you in a long time, buddy.
I know. I told you to get Pepto-Bismol when you were eating that hot chip, but you obviously didn't listen to me. That's why you were flaming out of your asshole.
Actually,
that's why I'm having this discussion now, because I figured the pain of this conversation will wash away the stomach pain. Okay, sorry.
The reason you're having pain in this conversation is because you actually have no capacity to listen. You just want to react to shit that people say without actually internalizing it. You don't know how to have conversations with people.
Thank you for that.
All right.
But unfortunately, you're wrong, and you just don't have the necessary education to know why. But I'll explain it later.
Don't tell me how much fucking education I have, bro. Like,
well, that's what you've been doing.
Unfortunately, the fact that just came out of your mouth means that I know you don't have much education. I'm sorry.
Cormatina, do you do a lot of debates on the internet?
No, I don't.
By the way, I love your performance is incredible. By the way, I just got to say.
I don't know. Actually, this is actually the reason I don't do debates on the internet.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Because education, you know.
Because you're doing a remarkable job not taking the bait. I just got to say. So far, but like you already know that the moment that you get mad, it's like everyone perceives you to have lost the debate, which you haven't. I'm just saying. So you're doing a great job. But I get mad all the time as well, so I understand.
I'm not mad. I'm actually just perplexed about people telling me about my own history is all. That's just weird to me. Yeah.
It's definitely a heated conversation. Okay, so the thing I wanted to ask Destiny is just the basics. Like, why do you not want people to say the N-word in public? Just like really basic stuff.
So in general, I think you should stay away from certain forms of humor in public because it can further like embolden racist thought, or can be basically hijacked by people that have certain types of thought and then used to kind of like further their own shitty beliefs, basically.
Okay. That's totally fair. But like the idea is that like the N-word itself is dehumanizing the black people and has been historically used to dehumanize black people and justify slavery and segregation, right?
I think there's two different things there. So the N-word has been used to historically dehumanize black people, of course. Intrinsically, by virtue of its own existence and just uttering it, I don't agree with that, no.
Yeah, I mean, if you read like Tom Sawyer or whatever, or Huckleberry Finn in a classroom, like the classic example that right-wing chuds probably... Is Bastiat right-wing, by the way? He looks so right-wing.
I like to put the look on, but though I worship at the altar of the free market, I wouldn't call myself a right winger, my man. It's good to meet you.
That sounds like a right wing answer to me.
Yeah, that's the most.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Markets are
okay. I don't care, Bastiat. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that.
No. You asked me the question. I'm answering you, comrade.
Oh my God, Jesus!
Amen, brother. I love this guy. Fucking liberals unite. Hell yes.
Hold on for a second. Okay.
Neo-libs, rise up.
All right, Alec Baldwin. Just chill for a second.
What's your beef with Alec Baldwin? You're on the same side of him on most issues, I imagine.
Exactly. This is exactly why you're a right-winger, but it doesn't matter. All right. Just stop talking for a second. Okay, so you were saying that the N-word in and of itself is not dangerous as a word, or it doesn't always dehumanize black people, like every utterance of it. Sure, I'll give you that. Or there are certain examples where you can use it. But my problem with this entire conversation has been that, like, you talking about it in public, don't you feel like that kind of undermines your entire point of view about...
Okay, so my response to this, because this argument has been repeated a million times, I think there is a measurable difference between saying, I use jokes in private that I wouldn't be comfortable saying in public, versus saying the actual jokes I say in private in public. I think there is a measurable difference in that. So, like, for example, I'll go back to the sex answer, right? Like it would be uncomfortable, but like I would be okay like telling like my girlfriend's dad like, yeah, we have sex or we sleep together. I wouldn't be comfortable like graphically describing the acts because I think that there is a measurable difference there.
Yeah, no, I think there is a difference there certainly, but the reason why you felt the need to elaborate on it or talk about it, and obviously there's been a lot of backlash since you did this. The reason why you felt the need to elaborate was probably because you were worried that if someone leaked it, because you do use it in private, that it might compromise your position, right? Is that incorrect?
I'm not worried at all. The only thing that happens is that anytime some particular group of people get mad at me, they dig through stuff or they act like stuff has changed. This is literally the stance I've had on language for the past 7 years. Nothing has changed. I've always felt this way. It's just right now on the internet, I've got a new group of people that are mad at me, so they've decided to jump in on it like I've never said it before, and they've turned it into a whole new argument.
I think we know you've said it before. Like
no. It's not. First of all, nice framing. It's not about whether or not I have or haven't said it before. Okay, which is not even really the topic of debate. It's about whether or not I've had this stance on public versus private language. And I've always been ultra clear. I don't care what kind of jokes people make with their friends. I care about the ideas that people have in relation to voting. I care about the way that people conduct themselves in public platforms. These are the two types of like areas that I can police, that anybody can police. And these are the two areas that I'm most concerned with, is how people vote and how people act in public.
Can I say that this is kind of missing the point?
I don't care what you say, but okay.
Well, I know you don't. It's fine. You're paid not. It's okay. You're paid not to.
Well, yeah. The problem is that you lack the education to talk about it. So I don't really care what you say.
No. Hold on. Okay.
Listen, Hassan. Let me stand up for myself.
What's up, Quarantine? Go ahead.
I don't really care what he wants to say about my education. I know who I am. I know how educated I am. I know the work that I've done. He doesn't know me from shit, so it's okay. I'm not hurt by that. And it's also okay because generally the first thing that somebody wants to come back on when challenged by a person of color is to say, well, you lack the education to talk about your own fucking experience. It's kind of bizarre to me, but it's also not, because this is also inside of
it shouldn't be bizarre to you. You've been doing it all night. So yeah, I would expect you to understand it perfectly well. You employed it all night.
if I'm telling you things and you're just waiting to respond to me and not internalizing them or citing your own information, it tells me that you don't have a background on it. So yes, I'm going to say, how far back do I have to go with you here?
Yeah, and that's the problem. And that's why I realized when you even ask that, I know just by what you're saying, you don't have the necessary prerequisites to have a conversation, I do. Do you see how stupid it is? Wait,
Quarantine. Hold on. I don't want to have this conversation. This is so dumb. Quarantine. Hold on. Quarantine.
You have to understand that, like, when he constantly says that, like, oh, well, you're not qualified. Like, I can't have the conversation.
Yeah, like, I've been black my entire life.
Who cares? Just because you're black doesn't mean you have a good stance on public use of language.
Well, yeah. From two matters. From a standpoint of epistemology, from actual like learned knowledge, actual lived experience, and actual education.
Even from lived experience, you can go from Chris Rock, who's using.
Oh my god, I am not interested in a conversation about who is or is not qualified to have this conversation. Sure. Can we just comedians like Richard Pryor? Comedians like Richard Pryor have been against the use of the N-word even in comedy, right? These are two black people whose lived experience is right or wrong. Just because you're black doesn't mean you have like necessarily the correct insight on this. You do have like some personal experience that you can share that might be unlived by most white people, I would imagine, but that doesn't make your argument automatically correct.
Yes, but the thing is, I'm not here to argue with you. That's the thing that you don't understand.
What are we here for? You're just here to talk at me.
No, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to talk to people that are watching this platform right now. Okay, couple of things. One, because of the audience that's currently watching the show, this entire spectacle that we're involved in right now, who might be a person of color and say to themselves, wow, do I actually want to participate on this platform with people like this that I'm going to run up against? And then two, people who might watch you or anybody else that seems to agree with you, that'll say to themselves, oh, wow, it's actually okay for me to do that shit around black people. What I'm trying to say to you and what Cole tried to impress on you is that, no, it's not okay. And it actually has effects on us, whether you want to believe it or not. It's okay. I'm not here to convince you because I know that you're paid not to believe anything that I say.
First of all, you don't know what the fuck I'm paid for. You have no fucking idea who I am or what I've been paid to do, okay? So shut the fuck up with that, all right? You clearly have no fucking idea what you're talking about. So I don't know why you would accuse me of doing that.
I'm just going to say to you, try to use words to me on the internet right now that you used to me for face-to-face. I'm trying to do that with you. I would ask you to have the same amount of respect to do that to me. That's all I'm asking.
All right, well, if you're in Amsterdam or whatever fucking next convention or Politicon or some shit, we can talk about this face-to-face. I'm pretty much the same person
as I would be. You're not going to have this conversation with me.
Why? What are you threatening to be?
I don't know. I thought when I handed it off to Quarantine, we were going to get like a...
I don't give a fuck.
I'm just saying.
All right, hold on. No, I'm not interested. No, hold on.
Ian, I think this is a basic thing that should be required when we're having a conversation. Talk to me the way that you would if we're face to face. That's it. I don't talk
what
to
would
people
be
like that.
different?
Dude, come on. That's so dishonest. Like, you were posturing this entire podcast. Don't pretend you weren't posturing. Come on.
What do you mean posturing?
Posturing, like, oh, you don't have the education to talk about this. Oh, what's wrong with your soul, dude?
Trying to act like you're the sole authority of who can or cannot say the N-word and in what setting. Like, come on, dude.
I don't know about our relevance experience, but obviously for quarantine, it's right. A subject that's important because the conversation that's taking place is like the usage of a word that like actively and continues to harm people that look like quarantine. Like it's understandable that he's going to have a passionate reaction to this. Like I think we are all capable, as at least people on the left, to some degree of understanding that, right?
True. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's
which is totally why I've been trying to pass it off to our relevant.
It's totally reasonable for him to be. It's totally reasonable for him to be a little bit passionate about this issue.
Yeah, but it's really like I literally sat in front of a fucking Jesse Lee Peterson audience, like arguing with a fucking black cop, and this guy's telling me that like if I was talking to him in person, I'd be like a cowarding white man. Like it's hugely posturing, and it's huge like internet tough guy behavior. It's just dumb as fuck, and it doesn't do anything to further his argument.
What I'm saying to you is, please talk to me and show the same kind of respect that you would have for a face to face. That's it, because I'm doing that to you right now.
I show respect to people.
I've also seen you on Jesse Peterson's, and I've also seen you on Jesse Peterson, and your posture is infinitely different in person.
Watch the last conference that I was just on. My posture is the exact fucking same. You can pretend it's not. Maybe you haven't seen it, but it's literally the exact fucking same thing. If someone says some real dumb shit to me, or if they start this bullshit like, oh, well, I could tell you're not educated, even though I'm not going to tell you why, or I'm going to diatribe you for 20 minutes and I can't respond to any of your questions, then yeah, I'm going to be really fucking indignant against them.
Okay, but that doesn't even matter. It's irrelevant because we're having the conversation on the internet regardless. But thank you.
I agree.
I personally don't think that's not that important to me, at least. But I also totally understand where quarantine's coming from. So but going back to my original point that I was trying to have earlier is like, so you don't think that having this ongoing debate over and over about like you justifying the use of the N-word in private is not going to have a lasting damaging impact that undermines your original position that you want to minimize harm as best as possible, or even as a moral egoist, you want to
no, I don't think there are. I don't think there are.
That is like better for everyone.
I don't think there are genuinely. I don't think there are genuinely racist people out there that stopped using language because of my point of view. I don't think those people watch me, right? I don't think there's even people on the fence.
There are people who you recently converted from the alt-right who absolutely did hold on to genuinely racist positions, though, that are currently watching this podcast and probably feel emboldened with their previous positions now that they're seeing the person that they respect the most literally belittling black people.
Stop. Come on, dude.
No, hold on. In a way that you and I both know, when you trigger someone, they're going to respond in a specific type of way and react in an emotional way. And your audience, especially, is going to react to it.
Both of these guys have been triggered the entire night. Not as much quarantine, to be fair. Although I do take issue with the way they argue. But like that other guy came here,
dude. We're talking about the N-word, dude. We're talking about like defending the use.
If you can't have the conversation, then don't. That's not my fault that you're triggered by the conversation. I don't take responsibility for you there. I'm not going to sit there and endure your verbal abuse because the conversation triggers you. Like, of course I'm going to fire back. What the fuck do you expect?
There is literally nothing that could, I guess, help you understand or empathize with quarantine's situation. I don't think
it's not about empathizing with the situation. I can empathize with it. I just disagree with the arguments.
There isn't any singular word that is so toxic and associated with so much negative history.
And I don't say it around him. It's not his business what I say in private.
I know, but when you defend, and your quote verbatim was, I say the N-word in private all the time. And when you defend that, and when you say that, it all of a sudden becomes a public conversation.
Okay, so hold on. I have a question. I'll pass this off to you, Irrelevant, and then you can respond. Does the context matter of like how you say it in private? Does that matter to you?
Absolutely should.
So Irrelevant, go off. Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was directed at Hasan. So, so for me, absolutely, 100%. But also, just to target your point there, that like talking about it does damage. You could stop asking him about it, and then he'll never talk about it again.
Hey,
I mean, that's the solution. If we're being real. But also, if we want to get like rooted back on topic, I'm not sure if anybody has anything more necessarily to talk about that specifically, but I believe I was hitting a point where Quarantine, you said that you're okay with race play amongst informed consent.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Wait, are we going back to race play, or should I respond to what our relevant said?
Oh, sorry, go for it.
Context is important as well. I understand that context is important. But again, saying like, oh, I say the N-word all the time in private kind of eliminates that context, or at least offers context, don't you think, are relevant, if we're being honest? Like, and also there are logs, like, I mean, at the end of the day, there are logs of Destiny using the N-word in exactly the way that we are all thinking that Destiny would use the N-word.
Sure.
I don't think
wait, hold on. If you're just gonna come in here and speak a bunch of shit, there have been times where I've made really edgy comments in my chat room. I think it was like 2 years ago, and I've changed my mind on that. I used to consider like my chat room to be like a pretty closed forum, and I should be able to be edgy in there. But I've rethought that. That is something I've changed my position on. Much as I'm sure you changed your position on things too. And definitely, if people like fucking Bad Bunny are floating around at the end of this conversation, right? People like that have been like 3 months ago saying words like that. If you guys are gonna let her fucking slide on that shit, then I think it's okay that a person that has like a history of arguing these issues should probably be okay to slide on.
Logs are fake.
Wait, come on, dude, you're talking for 10 fucking hours, okay? So yeah, I have used like really edgy jokes in situations that are more public than I should have. I acknowledge that, and you know what? I don't make those edgy jokes in my private chat anymore. I've also said way worse shit if you go back a few more years, and you know what? I've changed my opinions on those things as well. Sure, like if you've come in here to cite shit for me at 5 years ago, like we can play. We've already played that fucking game. Like if you want, we can play that fucking game all day. But I don't want to fucking do that here right now. That's not relevant to this conversation at all.
What it is that causes you to just raise your voice and yell over people than simply saying, hey, you know what, maybe that's not okay, and that's it. I'm not sure why this is so important to you.
Why would he get so upset when people are trying to characterize him as being incredibly racist?
I don't know why we
talking
about Bad Bunny, by the way, but I mean, I don't really defend Bad Bunny at all. I don't know if you know that.
No, I know, but I know she's got
the only time I've ever like defended what Bad Bunny has done is when I said you have done the same exact things as far as groping me, but that was pretty much it.
Sure.
Pixie, go ahead. I know you wanted to hop in here.
Okay. So I guess like this is a point that I was like just trying to say before, and I'll say it again because I might be getting a little bit lost in the conversation. But I think the point that people are trying to like make a Destiny is that, you know, let's say that for whatever reason, let's say you're 100% right in the sense that you yourself are definitely not racist. Even though you say the N-word in those jokes, it's just for edgy humor or whatever. Even if you yourself, like theoretically 100% not racist, the point is that these jokes, because of the context they hold, when you make them, whether it be in private or public, they do tend to like either reaffirm other people's biasness or like subconscious bias that they might have like, you know, that they might not even be like realize that they have. So when you constantly like make jokes that like dehumanize like a whole classification of people, even if it's just for the shock value, what you end up inadvertently doing is, you know, kind of like, I guess like shifting or like reaffirming people's like subconscious bias that has a very real world effect, whether it be like in hiring. For example, we know people have black sounding names are less likely to get hired for a job than white sounding names, or whether it be in things like, you know, as extreme as like hate crimes. So I think that's
if you take this position, do you agree that like every single person that's ever made like a racial joke is like contributing to racism? And you can answer yes, this is not a get you.
As a matter of fact, yes.
Okay, so like people like George Carlin or Louis C.K. or what about black comedians that do it? What about people like Chris Rock or like MacGruber with the Boondocks or Dave Chappelle?
Is there a context where racial humor is acceptable, especially when it involves using slurs?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so if the context does exist, the last people that have the ability to exercise it without being racist are the people on this panel right now. If you can't understand the context in which we live to be able to discern these things, then no, you don't get to have that conversation, unfortunately.
So another non-answer.
You're not George Carlin. It's not a non-answer. It's just saying that you're not able to
dude, you can't answer a single fucking question.
So, I just answered your question.
Didn't answer shit. You just fucking gatekeep. That's all you've done all night.
Okay,
nobody here actually
hold on.
You people have been going back and forth. Just a minute here. Nobody here actually thinks there should be any legal restrictions on what people say. Are there? Right? Nobody is on that train, right? We're just talking about niceties, right?
Legal restrictions, I actually do think that, but for another thing, that I think would be getting off topic. But when you're talking about like the whole like, oh, are there any racial jokes that are acceptable at all? You know, I feel like the line can be clearly drawn if the joke is implying like something negative, or whether it's like, you know, implying something that's like kind of inconsequential, right? So if somebody makes like a joke about like how Puerto Ricans are like very loud or whatever, like, that's a stereotype rooted in like some sort of truth, but it's not like negative at all, at least, the way me and a lot of other people see it. But if somebody says a word, like a joke that has the N-word with it, that has like a very negative historical context, and then you add upon something that like also implies that Black people are lazy or like, criminals or thieves or whatever, then yeah, that joke isn't acceptable because it has like a negative context and like a negative implication.
Wait, what you just said was literal racism. Wait, hold on. The implication that like Puerto Ricans are always loud, like that can be like literally racist. What do you mean?
I mean, why do you think, like, I don't see
that
how
implying like any group of people has like a particular trait because you've seen it in some, like that's by like saying like all Asians are good at math or all Black people have big dicks or all whatever people have whatever stereotype, that like that's literally racism.
Oh, Destiny's using this opportunity to say all of his racist jokes.
Good meme.
Okay.
Good meme.
Look, the thing I wanted to ask was, in all seriousness, I think there's a very particular image that people have in their minds when they think about two white guys saying the N-word in private, which is, I'm assuming, what is happening, right? Like, I don't think you're saying the N-word with a hard R with your Black friends, considering that your one very public Black friend was very upset. It's kind of why we're having this conversation.
Wait. So why would you bring this up? Wait. Why would you bring this up when if I showed you that I did have a Black friend that was cool with it, would you walk this whole argument back, or are you just trying to score brownie points?
No. Hold on. I want to understand. I want to understand.
Let Hassan finish with the question. Hold on, Destiny.
Can I just finish my point? Wait, why are you jumping on the point? I didn't even end it yet. I wanted to understand in what context do you think is acceptable? Is there like a joke that you could perhaps fill us in on where you have used the N-word? Because like the stuff that I have seen, it doesn't seem any different than what other gamers and the people that you literally debate on the internet would say. So if there's like a particular joke that you think is acceptable to say the N-word in, Black person, white person, because I already said like context is still relevant in this conversation. I would love to hear it.
Sure. So there's 3 different jokes that we looked at on stream yesterday. One is a South Park joke with the Jeopardy thing. Another one is the story that the white guy tells not Danny Gambino, Danny Glover's. Fuck no. What is Childish Gambino's name?
Donald Glover.
Donald Glover.
Oh, it isn't. Okay. Yeah, that Donald Glover's white friend tells him in Atlanta. That's with the soft A. And then there was the and then there was a third joke too that involved the N-word. But like all of these kind of lose their impact if you don't have the actual word. But like that's some example of like racial humor that kind of like necessitates like a slur for it to have its impact or whatever.
Okay, and that's the contextual. That's what you're talking about. You're just retelling jokes that you've heard before,
sure.
Or are you just running around and
just calling Black people the N-word? Like, is that the?
No, not calling Black people the N-word. Well, I mean, when you say the N-word, you are saying that Black people are the N-word. That's literally the implication of the N-word, right? Isn't that the reason why we're having this conversation? Because it's problematic.
Not necessarily, but like I think I just gave you some examples where you can have like racist like words like the N-word that can be part of a greater skit that can be funny. What about Dave Chappelle's act with the N-word family, right? Like that's another example of a joke that like kind of necessitates like a slur.
Okay, I've got a question. And
wait, no, hold on, because that was a gotcha question, and I want an answer. So there's some. So then, do you acknowledge?
I'm genuinely interested in finding out in which circumstances. Is it okay?
Do you acknowledge that there are funny circumstances to use it?
Or your Black? Wait, what?
Can I stop you real quick? It's just I'm getting a headache, and the reason for that is it's like, why is I guess the thing that this all really boils down to is like I'm not really interested in what context it might be okay, which is why when I keep getting asked this question, I'm like, actually, it requires about 3 or 4 more questions to unpack it. What I'm saying is, why do we need to have this conversation rather than the possibility that you could just say, Steven, you know what? Yeah, it's kind of messed up. I'll try to not do that anymore. Why is that so hard for you?
Why is it so hard for you to just fuck out of my private conversations? And then we never have to talk about it. Look how easy that is.
I have nothing to do with your private conversation.
Oh, well then great. Then we don't have anything to talk about.
Well, as a matter of fact, we do. Because when you say...
Okay, so you do care about my private conversations. Don't say
the reason why we're having this conversation is pretty obvious, right? It's because you at some point...
Guys, why
they're not. My private conversations have not been made public.
Conversation is because at some point throughout your...
Nobody knows I've said the N-word. They only know that I've said that I say it.
Hold up.
But that's the whole point. The reason why we're having this conversation is because you at some point or at multiple points throughout your like online career or whatever in order to either make a point or just to let it out, have admitted and continue to admit and defend that you say the N-word in private. That's why we're having the conversation.
Because people like you keep
asking him. So
the only reason we're having this conversation right now is because you guys wanted to talk about it.
I know, but isn't it? Look,
wouldn't it be easier for you to just not worry about my private conversations? Wouldn't that be?
No,
how about easier if you were just like, I don't say it anymore? Just like
you want me to lie about it? You want me to make you feel better? Here, I'm not going to say anything edgy in private anymore. There you go. Do you feel better about it now?
You want me to be honest?
All right, hold on. All right, no, hold on. Everybody, hold on, Hasan. Hold on.
If you lied about it.
Hold on, Hasan. Hold on. All right. I know Lance has been trying to get on this. Lance, you had something to say.
Oh, thank you.
Well, the point I was trying to make originally was, yes, I think you lying about it.
Did he get a name change?
I'm gonna kill.
But come on, dude. You lying about it literally.
This is great. No, the reason I was quiet for a long time is I didn't think this was something that a mostly white panel should be sounding off about. But I will say this as someone who doesn't like scream the N-word at inanimate objects and chairs and stuff like that. What do you lose, Destiny, by not saying it in public versus?
I already gave you 3 examples and none of you refuted them, so that's why I lose. I lose the ability to.
I'm not saying in terms of your language is being censored or anything like that. Like you've lost the ability. I'm censoring you, but I'm just saying what do you lose if you don't say it anymore, even though you could say it? Like what? Like you could say it. You have the power to, but you just
I lose the ability to tell some
personal
jokes.
Decision.
Yeah,
I lose the ability to
lied about
the joy
you lied about not saying it in private. Even though you do say it.
Yeah.
Why would I lie? I don't want to lie about my positions. I don't feel good about that.
And this conversation isn't, just to be clear, this conversation isn't specifically about whether or not Destiny can say the N-word. This is just like a general, like in general.
I mean,
the point is,
I just don't want it to turn into like character assassination. Like this has nothing to do with Destiny's.
Mind waves. Don't worry. It's not
part of the show, mind waves. Come on, scavenger of human misery. That's the entire point of this format.
No, it just seems like
my damaged soul.
The conversation about whether or not Destiny has or has not said that, like it's not interesting to me.
No,
right? I wanted to have this as a topic because I thought it'd be interesting to like actually have a nuanced conversation about whether or not this could possibly be acceptable in like some.
It's impossible to have a nuanced conversation when there's somebody who has experienced complete epistemic closure to accepting new information. That's
your
the problem.
Experience has nothing to do with epistemic.
I'm not talking.
I don't know why
I'm talking about you have experienced epistemic closure such that you cannot accept new information and possibly reconsider. That's it.
That's not true. But wait, why did you ask me earlier if I would change my mind? And I just told you I would. Now you're telling me I have epistemic closure.
Okay, serious question. Okay, serious question.
Serious question.
Okay, Destiny, you say certain things in private that you don't say in public.
Yep.
So why not follow through on that similar principle and just say that you're no longer saying it, even if you do continue to say it in private? Because if your entire purpose here in not saying the N-word in public is to potentially like mitigate any sort of additional damage or like continue to justify using it and help, and give other people the opportunity to use it, then why not just lie about it?
Sure. Okay, that's a fair question. Sure. The thing is, that's not my goal. My goal isn't harm reduction in society. My goal when I stream is that I like following arguments to where they go, and that's what I enjoy. Literally, that's like the foundation of every single thing I do. When we debate economics, we debate social issues, when we debate trans issues, whatever we talk about, that's my enjoyment. My goal on this platform is not to maximize like the spreading of positive public messages. That's a big byproduct of what I do, and if I can do that, I like to do that because it's enjoyable. But that's not like my 100% absolute stated goal.
So this is all just hypothetical.
If you enjoy saying the N-word in private, why don't you say it in public then? Doesn't that also maximally increase your joy?
No, because I don't want to empower groups of people. It doesn't increase my joy.
Okay,
I don't like the idea that somebody could take what I say and then run with it in some racist fucking manner. I don't enjoy that.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say to you is that they would do that anyway by you.
If we were to show
I would rather.
Wait, hold on. Quarantine.
Quarantine said they'll do it anyway.
Okay.
So if quarantine is
basically like you just have no responsibilities. What I'm trying to say here, like, what do you think people who are watching this right now would think of trying to participate in this platform? What do you think people think? You have no responsibility because this is all hypothetical to you.
What do you mean it's all hypothetical to me?
It's all hypothetical because it is not your right.
Can I make a statement on why you wouldn't lie?
I'll explain to you why it's hypothetical. Because you said a second ago what you lose is your ability to make jokes, but you would actually rather lose a friend somebody who trusts you, somebody who likes you, somebody who wants to be around you. You'd rather lose that.
Dude, why do we do these dumbass arguments? Actually, and the answer is yes. I stand for my principles. I don't put my friends before my principles. Yeah,
Wait, I have a question.
It's not the principle to say stupid. No, hold on. Captain English second language over here. Slow your fucking roll, okay? It's not the principle on being able to say the N-word. It's the principle on whether or not I feel like I should be able to enjoy. Also, by the way, I like a negative response. If all of you guys felt consistently about this, every single one of you should be rallying against video games because the established link between video games. Can you shut up for 1 second while I respond to Hasan? The established link between video games and aggressive behavior is undeniable, and the fact that you guys don't have a strong stance on that,
well, you'll sit here and this dumb shit, even though you know it's fucking dumb. Can I
finish one sentence, dude?
Even
though you know that this conversation is dumb as fuck.
That study correct, just in the way that you're responding to people.
You got it, dude. Oh my god, and you're proving me correct to say that you don't have any education. Keep it up, dude. Keep up the great work. It's not about whether or not I can say or not say a particular. It's not about whether I can say or not say a particular word in private. It's about whether or not I feel like I should be able to engage in edgy jokes privately that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing publicly. And I think I have that right. And I am more comfortable admitting that publicly at the risk that there is some racist person that didn't say it before but now is going to, rather than sacrifice or compromise my ability to have private conversations with other people without having your hand in that conversation. Yes, that is a principle that I do respect.
Wait, Destiny,
I totally understand that. I totally understand that.
Clearly don't.
Hold on. Chill. Wait. Pixie. Go ahead. Go ahead, Pixie.
Okay, thank you. So I just remember watching a video of yours, Destiny, like a while ago. You were arguing with this vegan dude, blah blah blah, and you stated clearly that when it comes to your principle of morality, your whole like stance or your whole premise is usually just like, you know, as long as you're not harming another person, you shouldn't do it. Like, right? Like, you know, just don't harm other people. And that was like your main principle when it came to morality. Do you not hold that anymore? Has things changed?
That is not my main principle when it comes to morality. My main principle is maximizing for my own preferences. And part of the ways that we do that is through altruistic behavior. But when somebody tells me that they're uncomfortable with something that I say in private, that then your comfort stops where my privacy begins. Okay, if you don't like the fact that that furry porn exists, you don't have the right to tell me not to masturbate to it. Or if you don't like that I might say a certain joke or believe in a certain religion or whatever, if I do it on my private time, I couldn't care less about somebody getting
about it on your show.
We're only talking about it because people like you only want to talk about it. Like you guys, I've been.
You brought it up. You said it on your show.
I have a 10-year body of work talking about social issues. Okay, and the only people that have brought this up obsessively have been people on the left. So if anybody's getting empowered right now, it's because you guys want to use this as some kind of
hold on. I want to ask a follow-up question. I want to ask a follow-up question to Lance. So Cormantine, you're gonna have to stop for a second.
It's our fault.
Ian, please don't talk over me.
This is my show. What do you mean don't talk to you like that? Dude, you've been talking half this fucking show! Please shut up when I ask you to shut up!
Ian's gotta run the show.
What are you talking about? I'm trying to ask Lance a fucking question and you're over here spouting off bullshit. Come on, Cormantine, I love you, but what the fuck is this?
No, I got it. Only
You're
the
still going!
You get to actually have a
Oh
conversation. Holy shit, dude.
I'm gonna mute you, dude. Come on.
Well, I mean, that's been
Lance, hold on. No. Oh my, I'm muting you, dude. All right, fuck it. Jesus, I didn't want to mute you, dude, but this is what it's come to.
Destiny.
I can't. No, Hasan, you're gonna have to wait. I'm sorry. All right, Lance.
What the? I wasn't even talking.
All right, hold on, Lance. So you were trying to say that like possibly by Destiny admitting that he like says this in private and like him defending it or whatever is gonna like embolden racists. Like, how do you think that actually happens? Like, why do you think that?
I'd like to pass my turn on to Cormantine now.
Oh, fuck off!
Well done. Hey, Mind Waves, or Ian.
Am I still muted or not?
Ian, you're not muted.
That's solidarity right there.
I'm not? Oh, okay.
Yeah, Cormantine, you're unmuted, by the way. Just, if I try to moderate, respect
I just wanted to correct one thing, which was you said it's people on the left that approach you about this, and I'm saying no, it's actually a lot of people of color that have been having this conversation, whether you want to accept it or not.
No, not people on the right and not people on the center. It's only been people on the left. Don't pretend it's just people of color. It's not true.
There's no right.
Yeah, I wonder why progressive people of color would have an issue with this versus, you know.
We literally have hold on. We have a progressive person of color in here trying to defend the private use of the N-word, but nobody's been willing to like listen to him.
Man,
so
that's cool.
Wait. Oh, by the way,
trying to shut him down.
I don't even know if All Relevant and I might disagree on this. My point was always and still is to this day. Why not? If your goal is harm reduction, at least for your own personal benefit, and it obviously is, then that's why you don't use the N-word in public.
I'm not on anybody's side, you fucking dumbass chat. All right, I'm not on anybody's side.
No
I'm just
longer
trying to
given out to racist people
relevant
who
actually
could use
fucking
the arguments that
speak
you're
for once.
currently
Holy
advancing
shit.
and probably are. Why not just discontinue saying that you say the N-word all the time in private, and then yell at furniture in your house all the time if you want?
The foundation of socialism, lying for exigent purposes.
If people want to make my argument to say like,
okay, you think I'm a
words
Destiny
privately,
dick writer?
they could
You
be
have
doing that
not
anyway.
seen
I
my
have no
stream. I
fucking
don't know
idea if
why
that's
the fuck
happening
you're
or not.
subbed to
That's
me.
never been what
Definitely
I've
have
been
not
concerned
ever
with.
checked out
I've
my
been concerned
Twitter.
with people's behavior.
If you think I'm some
and I've been
Destiny
concerned with how
sycophant,
people
you're a
vote. Those are the only two things I
dumbass.
care
All
about.
right,
I
I
don't give
almost
a
said some
fuck about
gamer
what people
words
do in
right
their
there.
private time.
Get the
As long
fuck
as
out
it
of my
doesn't
chat
bleed
and
over to bullshit.
unsub
If it does
me
bleed over to
right
public
now.
shit,
You don't
then
need
we'll
to be
talk
subbed to
about
me
it.
if you have that
That's
dumbass
the
fucking
point.
take. All
Okay,
right.
okay,
No,
so-
you're a
so-
public. Sorry, go Carmentine. Go on.
No, I'm saying back to the point. This is all hypothetical anyway. Like none of this makes a difference to you because you're not the kind of person that actually.
None of it makes a
values-
difference to me because I'm fucking white. Of course it doesn't make a difference to me. What do you mean?
Well, now the truth comes out. Holy smokes. Okay. All right.
What do you mean now the truth comes out? Obviously, I'm not intrinsically affected by the N-word. You expect me to say anything different?
The issue of you using the N-word in private is that it bleeds out into public, and not
Only when
just
I get
this
grilled.
conversation. No, not just this conversation. The need for you to elaborate that you use the N-word is not a new thing. You said it yourself. You've been talking about this for a very long time. So
Yeah, but
obviously, you are the
usually-
one who originally brought it
No.
up at some point.
Usually, when it gets brought up, it's in a conversation with conservatives about what's acceptable behavior, and it's usually used in a way that brings conservatives over to a left side. Because usually, what somebody says is, "Should we be allowed to say? Are you going to police our jokes?" Blah blah blah. And usually, what I say in response is, "No, I think that you can tell jokes privately that wouldn't be accepted in a public manner." And that's usually where that argument stops. It isn't until I've started arguing with ass-paying socialists and fucking commies that try to hold over this weird idpol bullshit over me about like, "Oh, you should never ever say this." Blah blah blah.
I mean,
It's the
you
N-word.
tried
It's
to
the N-word,
cancel
and
me
that's
for-
literally the only
Come on,
thing
dude.
that
Don't
literally,
call
literally,
every
wait,
leftist a class
stop.
reductionist,
Notice
and then you
notice
turn
how,
around and
notice
act
how,
like an edgy
notice,
gamer.
yeah,
Come on.
okay. All of you guys are focusing literally on just the N-word too. It's not even the fact that it could encompass other races. That's your one
but I
razor
wasn't
focus,
focusing-
and it's
okay, but I
obviously
wasn't-
why it's razor focused here is
Oh my
because this is
God.
you don't care about making an actual argument. You're just trying to
How are you-
slam dunk because it looks really fucking stupid and bad when a white guy is trying to defend to multiple black people whether or not you should be able to say the N-word in private. You just like the optics. I understand that. I'm playing the
Actually
game.
true.
It's fun for me.
Regardless
It's
of
funny
that,
for
I'm
me,
glad
but
you
that's
still have
all
the
that's happening.
integrity to
At the
defend
end
your
of the
right to
day,
say the
at
N-word.
the end of the day, okay,
Why are you questioning
you who have defended dumb shit you've said by saying English is your
people's
second language when you're more
motives?
fluent in English than
When
fucking
I was
99% of the
asked
immigrants in
to
this
be in
country,
this
okay?
conversation,
All you guys are doing is
I
trying
was
to get
asked to be
slam
here.
dunk fucking optics. That's the only thing that's happening here. Don't
I have
bullshit
nothing
yourself
to
into
gain by
thinking
this.
anything
I was
else is
asked to
going
be in
on.
this conversation.
My
I had
criticisms
nothing
of
to do with
American
this
foreign
topic.
policy that you have also mirrored, and most
Carmentine,
people
don't
are
act like
not
you didn't have
offended
anything
by.
to do with this topic, dude. Come on.
My
So
criticism of American foreign
why don't
policy
you- why
that
don't
you
you
have
tell me-
literally
why don't you tell
mirrored
me what-
are exactly the same
Hold on,
as
Ian,
all the time.
Hassan, can you stop? I want to talk to my brother here for a second.
Yeah, what's up?
What do you what do you mean by that?
Well, from my understanding, both you and your buddy Cole were like contriving up some plan to like how to like tackle the subject. Am I wrong?
No.
Okay,
No,
well,
well,
you
that-
said you talked about it before.
Cole
the stream.
said Cole said that you wanted to talk about it, and he told me about that. We didn't contrive anything.
Okay.
Well, that's
All right.
contriving
So
what
you
you
so
just
you
said.
knew
He
it was going
told
to be
you that
talked
you
about,
wanted
and
to
you
talk
wanted to be okay. Yeah. So there we go.
Okay,
That proves
I'm
my
having a
point.
conversation. I'm having a conversation with my brother. Okay, so
I
Ian,
didn't know it was
please,
going to be
Ian,
talked
Ian,
about.
Ian.
What? What,
The
buddy?
thing I got to understand from you, because we've had a conversation about this before, right? Not on this particular topic. We've had a conversation before. We had to clear some stuff up, and here's why I kind of had that problem with you to clear this stuff up in the first place. I kind of feel like, and that's why I asked you, are you getting what you wanted out of this? I kind of feel like you having us on this spot to have this conversation and everyone kind of freaking out over what Destiny wants to say in this private time, it benefits you. I'm saying, fam, like this is why I keep bringing it back to people who are watching this right now. What kind of movement on the left do we think that we're building? Like I heard, Bad Bunny, Nicole's name brought up.
God.
Stop.
No, you're gonna question how left I am because I want to have
No,
this
I'm not
conversation on a
questioning-
platform,
the
and
words
you're gonna
come
make
out
the
of my-
argument that I'm profiting off
Why
of
are
it,
you
right?
yelling?
That's
Why
the
are you
argument.
yelling at? Why are
No
you
shame
yelling
in
at me?
profit.
Because-
It makes things possible.
I haven't said anything yet. Why are you yelling at me? Stop it,
Because
please.
like I don't know, where do you want to
No,
take this
don't-
conversation? What do you want to talk about, dude?
You haven't heard what I'm going to ask you yet. What I'm saying to you is, what kind of movement do we want to build where this ends up becoming the norm is what I'm trying to ask you. I didn't say anything about whether you're left enough. I'm saying this conversation right now, do you think that this is actually productive to building a movement?
Do you think I'm trying to build a movement with this fucking dumbass podcast, dude?
Well, what are you trying to do here exactly? That's my question. What are you trying to do here?
We're talking about compelling.
I don't know. What are you trying to do here? I thought we were all here for the fucking podcast, for the memes, for the conversations.
Okay. Can we get back to this topic instead of like just random stuff that we're talking about now? About whether the two black people he brought on, or the three black people he brought on, two of them were conspiring against like destroying Destiny or something.
Well, no. It's not a conspiring. No. He said
it wasn't about that.
They both agreed. Acting like, where did this come from? And they clearly agreed to have the conversation.
They knew what was going to happen when they came on the podcast. They knew it was going to be a topic. And I don't want you to pretend like that wasn't known.
Do Cole and I fucking mind meld? Do we share a brain? Like, what are you talking about?
You said you're being so obtuse about this. Wait, what the fuck is wrong with you?
He literally said to you what happened. He told me that he asked you about this conversation. I said, cool, what do you want to say? He says, okay, well, this is what I feel like saying. And that was it. There was no collusion to
so you were being reductive when you refused.
No collusion, ladies and gentlemen. No collusion.
No, it's just really I don't know, kind of weird to me how like the people who are taking the opposition, or the people who feel very strongly about this because this is the life that we've had to live through, and are in agreement on the topic. You think that we're like, I don't know, like conspiring together to do what exactly?
I wasn't saying that. You're pretending like we're talking about this subject out of nowhere when you knew this was going to be a subject, Cormentine. All right, you can't feign ignorance about this whole entire thing. All right?
Who's feigning ignorance?
You.
I'm not feigning anything.
He's being so obtuse. I don't know. I think he's arguing about it.
Silly. Destiny, is there any scenario in which you can see? Is there any scenario in which you can see your private use of the N-word bleeding into the public that would damage your brand or your reputation, and therefore not allow you to maximize your own personal pleasure or whatever?
Yeah, of course it's possible, sure, but I value my right to say things privately more. Like, this is literally why I don't carry sponsors. I really value my independence to be able to say or do what I want to, of course.
No, I understand that, but the main point that I was making, and I will make it again because it keeps getting convoluted with other shit, is that you censor yourself regardless in public because you don't want racists to weaponize it. Can you not see racists weaponizing your defenses right now of your right to use it in private?
The same way that I could see a rapist saying women want it because a lot of women like rape fantasies, the same way that a rapist could weaponize that, like a racist could weaponize what I say. No, I'm not willing to make sacrifices on what I do in my personal private time that shouldn't have an impact. I'm not saying it to another person.
I'm not even talking about what you do in your private time.
That's what you are talking about.
I'm talking about your defense of what you do. Yeah, I'm talking about.
I'm not going to lie about my views. I'm not going to lie about my views.
I'm talking about your defense of what you do in your private time.
Hasan, it's real rich that you're focusing on what Destiny does in his private time, when in your public time you literally fetishize the murderous symbology of the Soviet Union. You got hammers and sickles all over your channel, but you're picking on him. True, meaning murder.
I'm not even communist, but you're really not going to make the argument that, like, I don't know, the sickle is the same thing as, I don't know, a freaking Nazi symbol. Like,
he's right, it's worse. Fucking true.
Fucking true. He's death on a mass scale. Millions dead.
I know.
And hey, it's just
no, you're wrong. Tens of millions.
Hey, Basquiat, just like when you fly that American flag, you're supporting all of the fucking genocides and all the fucking innocent lives lost overseas and all wars and imperialistic fucking nonsense.
Yeah, you know what? America does shitty stuff too. That's okay, brother. You can admit it.
You guys, okay. You guys do understand that, like, Nazism, right, is an ideology, like, based on, like, fascism and, like, the core tenet.
We do. Basquiat was just being an idiot. Don't even give him any credence because Destiny is just trolling.
I'm not trolling, dude. That was the truest thing I've
heard. Don't even entertain it. Don't even entertain it. It's a really silly.
Hey, ignore it if you want. Ignore it if you want. Keep on trying to get those clips. Pick it on Destiny for the 10,000th time.
Okay. Good one. All right.
Fucking true is this guy?
Good one, Alec Baldwin.
It's total hypocrisy.
Okay.
What was it called? Neoliberalism?
I mean, honestly, just
I'm being very nice right now. I'm trying to.
I don't get it.
Look, I'm bracing the presence of dildos like this fucking reactionary dipshit that you guys brought on.
Well, what is that? See, you got nothing because
I'm trying to be as nice as possible.
You're sticking by your symbol.
Hold on,
I'm trying to be as nice as possible while we have this conversation. Okay. Irrelevant. You were going to make a point, and I really want to hear what you had to say about the usage of the N-word in private merging into the public, especially when we continuously have this conversation. Because one way to stop it, or at least from my end, would be Destiny holding on to the same principles that he holds on to, which is not using the word in public by just saying that he doesn't say it in private anymore.
Okay. So the problem that I have with lying about it is, if you lie about the fact that you say it in private and in public, you say that you don't say it in private. I mean, you can kind of see what happened to Bad Bunny in that situation, right? Like, if it leaks, you look like a piece of shit who was talking about how your shit doesn't stink in private, but it does, right? However, if logs were to get leaked of Destiny, for instance, saying it in private, well, everybody already knew that. So that's not really that big of a deal, or at least as far as like everybody already knew that, right? So I mean, more damage can still be done, and that's perfectly is what it is.
Isn't that kind of an argument, though? Isn't the potential impact that it might have on your brand or the work that you've done and make you look like a hypocrite literally the reason why you probably shouldn't even say it in private either?
No, absolutely. I think because Destiny, look at how much Destiny has lost just saying that he says it in private. Like, this is like absolutely massive.
So don't you think that if you want to maximize your personal pleasure, that would probably be the best way to go about it then, to not say it at all?
It's because a lot of people won't think he's a grifter because of this.
Yeah, listen, if people want to think I'm racist, that's fine, but don't think I'm not consistent. I'd rather be thought of as a racist, fucking black-hating, whatever, but don't call me inconsistent.
Hey, man, you're right. So if the Nazis are consistent within their own moral framework, then it's okay? Like, that's a really silly argument to make. I think moral consistency is only important for I don't know, other internet edgelords, I guess, if that's the audience.
So hold on, if you don't have any principles or values, of course.
All right, so Irrelevant, go ahead. Yeah.
So one of your principles is to say the N-word.
Wait, Hasan, hold on.
Dude, how are you gonna talk about after talking about fucking a war vet in the face with a brave mujahideen dick? How are you gonna?
Oh my god.
All right, there we go. I muted Destiny. All right, Irrelevant. You wanna have the floor on this, dude? There was a question posed to you and you didn't get to answer for the millionth time. So
not looking like a grifter is really important. It's one of the reasons why I don't fuck with Bad Bunny anymore at all. Like, I can't trust a damn thing that comes out of her mouth anymore because she acted like her shit didn't stink, and then it did, and then why would I ever give that person any credibility ever again? However, in the case of logs getting leaked of Destiny now, of him saying the N-word in private, I'm not going to think that he's a fucking grifter and never trust anything he says anymore, and the amount that he stands to lose just by uttering it in public tells me that he's willing to go on the line to prove that he is not a grifter. He's willing to show that he is going to take, for instance, maybe this results in a negative to income or what have you, in order to prove and stay logically consistent. This shows me that, like, for instance, he's not some shadow lurker ready like Bad Bunny is to call me a tree swinger in private. Like, that's really fucking important to me.
So you're fine with him. So him saying the N-word in private, you're saying, and this is okay if this is your point of view, but like, saying the N-word in private is not as bad as like Bad Bunny using racial slurs.
No. Like, let me give you a great example. Yeah, let me give you a great example. Because I'd say you like to believe that you stand up for POC people, right, Hasan?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so to some degree, if let's say I'm donating to you or what have you, right? And then I find out that you say that shit in private and you're acting like you didn't. That shit, I will never trust you again. That's fucked. But if you tell me ahead of time, but you still advocate for pro POC things, out in public and do all of the, activism, what have you, that you do charity work, all that good shit, then we break bread.
So is the damaging element that
you're lying to me?
It's the lying, okay, but like people consistently having this conversation about Destiny's usage of the N-word in private is already damaging his brand, as we have all admitted here,
correct?
Right? In one way or the other.
Do we know that?
Should people of color who might get offended by this or who might be upset by this, as they have already shown that they are, should they just not talk about it, considering that Destiny is already a good ally in the way that he is de-radicalizing certain gamers?
I'm not trying to make the claim that Destiny is morally perfect. Like morals aren't. I believe in moral subjectivity. So you can believe fucking Destiny's Hitler for all I fucking care. Like you, like legitimately. I just don't. I'm just making the comparison that if you believe that somebody is pro POC and they're selling the idea to you that you're pro POC, and then all of a sudden, and they're acting like their shit doesn't stink, and it leaks that they are not pro POC, or that at the very least they've been lying about their personal life of being entirely whatever. I don't ever say it in private, but turns out I do. Then
so what happens to the people who are upset though? Like what happens to the people who are upset or offended by Destiny's usage of the N-word then?
They have every right to be upset.
Okay.
Just like Destiny has every right to not.
They shouldn't talk about it
over and over again.
No, they can talk about it. Who said they can't talk about it?
Over again, and what happens
but
then?
the whole point is that you guys are saying, oh no, like this conversation would be over with if people just didn't bring it up, but people just didn't talk about like how upset they were. But like, so basically the solution is, oh, like suck it up and deal with it, right? Because that's what what I'm getting right here.
I wouldn't be here trying to argue the position if I thought we should just move on.
But I'm
getting from then what is the solution?
Wait,
right? The solution is either
go ahead.
The solution is like, okay, we probably shouldn't use that N-word in private or whatever, because, or like say that we're using it in private, because like once we do that, it's already out in the public space. Everybody already knows. You're gonna have a bunch of racists like hijacking the arguments and like using it for themselves and justifying themselves. Or then the other solution is, okay, we lie about it saying we lie about us like saying it in private or whatever, but then you're a hypocrite for doing so. You're actually a grifter, and if somebody brings it up again, then they should just suck it up because they're the ones actually feeling the racist. There's literally a no-win situation.
Okay, so this has to do with, I guess, my personal experience. Personally, maybe Cormentine can attest to this. I've had a lot of people growing up trying to sell me things because I'm black, trying to act like I'm selling it to you because I'm an advocate for black people. Trust me, here, buy this thing. And then it turns out they're absolutely not. So I'm not really too keen to give money or platform or at all support anybody that's trying to act like they're pro POC, but in the dark isn't. Like, I absolutely prefer people that legitimately are straight with me all the time, because legitimately
in my life, about using the N-word in private.
Absolutely. But then at least I know where they stand.
But what? Okay, but I'm asking you guys,
what is the solution? Irrelevant. Where do they stand then? Like a person who says the N-word with a hard R in private. Where do you think?
I like how you're going so hard, like the N-word with the hard R, and he says it, and there's a historical, like, it has to be so emotionally.
We're just, because we're I mean, the topic is the N-word
obviously,
in
like,
private.
he's black and he disagrees with you. It must be fucking Candace Owens Jr.
All right, shut the fuck up, both of you. Both of you, shut the fuck. All right, Irrelevant. The question was posed to you, Irrelevant. Go ahead and respond. And then I think Irrelevant. I think.
Just let the conversation proceed, Steven. This is not your ministry, bro. Let the people talk this out. Holy shit.
Irrelevant, go ahead and respond, and then I think.
Go ahead, Irrelevant.
Okay, so context really does matter. So when talking about, like, for instance, the N-word with a hard R, for instance, I use it in private when referring to a lot of things personally. That has to do with a lot of reclamation stuff for me personally as a black person. All right. If you disagree with that, it is what it is. All right. But also, one of the things that I think should be noted is I don't agree with people using black people using a hard R in private just because they're black. I think that stems from the idea that black people, on average, will have a dramatically higher percentage chance of knowing the ramifications of using the N-word in private and the context that is required to make sure that it's like not being used in a racist or derogatory manner, more than any other group. Right, that's because I think we can all agree JLP shouldn't be, or ABL shouldn't be using it in private, right? Probably, because they're probably just literally doing it with their white nationalist buddies. So it has to do more with the chance that they know the ramifications of the actions, right? So in the case of Destiny, right, if we're just targeting it at Destiny, let's disconnect it from Destiny because it constantly fucking throws us off base. If somebody understands, let's take Bernie Sanders, for example. I don't give a shit if he says it in private.
That's the thing. Yo, Rel, I would, and I'll tell you why.
Why?
For somebody to be able to stand next to civil rights marchers, for somebody who says that he was out there with SNCC, for somebody that says he was out there getting arrested, for him to use that word in private and to want to use that word in private automatically makes you not a comrade, bro. Like, how much Black liberation theology have you read? How much Black power dialectic have you?
Hold on.
To be able to come to that conclusion.
Wait, hold on.
Hang on. Please. I'll let you talk. You got to let me say what
I thought you were finished. Right? My bad.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say to you is the very people that he was walking next to and standing with, those people would have had a problem with him if he was using that language, and he wouldn't have been able to stand next to the movement. So
you're making a lot of assumptions right now.
Well, I'm not
because
making.
If I was standing next to him, if I was standing next to him, that wouldn't be true.
But you're not part of that movement. The thing is, I have actually read them. I have read
what?
I have read Stokely Carmichael. Okay, I have read Adam Clayton Powell.
And those are the only people that are allowed to stand next to him?
What I'm trying to say to you is that the people that he stood next to, if they wouldn't have accepted it, if it's not good enough for them, it's not good enough for me. Who are you to step over them and say, yeah, actually, it's cool with me? You know what I'm saying?
He's black.
Wait,
You don't respect. You're black. The thing is, your blackness does not make you answerable here, my brother.
What?
The thing, no, it's not your black. It's not your blackness. It's your.
Well, I mean,
social
Relevant
location.
kind of admitted that too before when he said JLP probably shouldn't say the N-word either.
Yeah, but
so
Comedian over here
obviously
has been saying his blackness has been central to the whole conversation. But now when this guy's blackness disagrees with you, you toss him aside.
No. I think
Why is
the
everyone talking? Why
point
is
that
everyone
Cormentine
talking
was
over me? Because I'm trying to clarify myself.
Yeah.
Why is everyone trying
Go ahead.
to
Sorry, Cormentine.
Let this be
Sorry,
between Relevant and Cormentine for a second, all right, guys?
Okay. What I'm trying to say to you is, you don't get to place yourself in front of them to say, okay, well, if it turns out that you're saying it back then to be cool with me. I mean, if it's cool with you, that's fine.
Yeah,
But
that's all I'm saying.
But hold up. Don't expect it to be cool with anybody else. And I would say that you'd probably be in the minority. The people that I care about is the people that he said that he stood next to and the purpose that he was standing next to them for. If they would have been cool with it, then it's not good enough for me either. So what I'm trying to say, the reason that I'm saying this is because I don't want anybody watching this to get the impression that, okay, well, if Relevant says it, then it must be good enough for me. And I'm saying absolutely not. It doesn't work that way. It's not just your blackness that makes you answerable on this topic. It's
I think
social
Relevant said
location.
that
You're not
too
there.
when he said that JLP or Candace Owens using the N-word with a hard R is like worse off than even some other people. So like, yeah, I think that was
ask Andrew Young. Ask Andrew Young how he'd feel about it. His answer is what's good enough for this conversation, but he's not here to answer for himself.
So that's the whole point, though, is that we judge the individual on the context and the content of their character based on whether or not they can say it.
No, I just say they can't say because they might.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to get in here real quick because like let me ask you this, I guess, Cormentine.
Is Relevant giving Destiny a pass?
No, that's not what's going on.
It is so gross that like it's so important to be black for this conversation, and then as soon as like this guy disagrees, well now hold on, your blackness doesn't matter. Like this is unironically, and it makes me sick. It makes me sick to my stomach. Shut up! Hey! Apparently him being black didn't matter, so I can talk on this now. Okay, so fuck off, right?
No, but you have no standing here. You have no standing.
Yeah, and apparently he doesn't either because he didn't read what you read.
No, I explained to him. You
explained why he had no standing.
We can disagree, but the thing is, we both black. We can have that conversation. You don't belong in this conversation. You're not here, bro.
Oh my god, dude.
Because I'm being implicated like in half the fucking shit you're saying.
Right.
Why the fuck am I going to listen to you? Why should
Why the fuck are you talking? I'm glad you just admitted that you're not listening to me. That's great, okay? Because you admit that we've never been having a conversation here. It's been you talking at me the entire fucking time. I'm glad you had the fucking guts to finally say it.
This is a hypothetical conversation for you. Is what
that's great. I'm just glad you had the guts to say that you're not having a real conversation with me.
I'm saying that I'm having a conversation.
Would have saved me a fuck ton of time. I got to cut the stream. I went and fucking had a good ass fucking wank instead of sitting here.
And I want to ask you some more questions.
I just want to know what your solutions are.
I said to you that I'm having a conversation with my brother Relevant. I wasn't having the conversation with you. I'm asking why you're in this back and forth that he and I are having. You don't have standing here, so you can butt the fuck out. All right, we'll talk about something else. This thing doesn't concern you.
All right.
Do we want to?
We just steered it away from.
I'm gonna ask Irrelevant. I'm gonna ask Cormentine. Do you guys just want to move on from the subject, or?
I don't. I really. This is like a massive point of contention because, like, unironically, people think that just because I've been saying this, I've gotten many DMs, many messages in my streams saying, "Hey, do you hear Destiny said the N-word?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with certain people saying it in private." And then they immediately leave or call me very derogatory things, acting like I'm something I'm not just because I said that. Like this idea that I have to, because I have this position, I'm defending Destiny is pretty fucking racist, honestly.
No one should be asking you to do that. Yeah, no one should be asking you to do that. But
all right, hold on, Hasan. I'm gonna have to unmute you. Hold on 1 second. There you go.
Yeah, the thing is, the fact that you're black on this platform, no one should be asking those questions.
What? I wanted to ask Relevant a question.
I'm saying that what Rel just said, that people are coming to him and asking him for comment and so forth. It's like, just because you're black on this platform doesn't mean that people are entitled to your time and energy for you to have to comment on this. What I'm saying is that's also wrong. Nobody should be doing that shit to you.
Yeah, that's why I tell him to fuck off.
Yeah.
Yo, Relevant. So we were talking about context. You said that in certain contexts it's appropriate like it could be appropriate to say the N-word. Yeah. Are there like contextually inappropriate times where someone could have used the N-word that would make you reconsider their opinion of them then?
100%, yeah.
So don't you think that that's still indicative that like saying the N-word in private can still be damaging to your brand, especially if you're a person who advocates for progressive ideals and has POCs on his side?
Yeah, it can be damaging. It can be damaging to your brand, or it cannot be. I mean, it's literally in the eye of the interpreter. For instance, there's a lot of people that, for instance, are turned off to you because of your USSR iconography.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
so,
I mean, I don't really care about that, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, Destiny
I don't care either.
Exactly. Like, okay.
I want to say something that's been bothering me for a little bit. That just,
no, but I can. The difference is like I can defend.
There's no
defend having USSR iconography.
All right, what's up? What's up, Pixie? What's up? I don't want to talk about USSR fucking bullshit. All right, that's not the topic here. It's like, please save that for another meme. But yeah, Pixie.
Okay. It's been touched upon like before, but I just want to like kind of state it blatantly, right? Like this whole argument, like, oh well, it's in private and you're not like affecting public. Like that's kind of fallacious, right? Like people's like private lives definitely affect their public lives and like vice versa, right? So like this whole idea of like, oh, you know, like, well, it's in private, like it's with my private friends, and like, you know, as long as people are doing it privately, I don't care what the fuck they do because it's not going to affect their public lives. That's absolutely false. We do know that people's like private opinions on things or like private like beliefs do affect them either in voting or in bias. So this whole idea, like, oh, it's private, it's not going to affect like the public sphere, that's not true.
How many racist jokes do I have to tell to get to be like being a Trump supporter? Can you give me the number so I can just say like one under it? Because I feel like I might be close and I don't even know it. Holy shit.
The point is, Destiny, maybe you are like the most logical person in the world and maybe you aren't racist, whatever. Like, as I said before, you can't control other people's thoughts, feelings, or subconscious like biasnesses,
well, do
right?
you think that you,
like,
wait, well, I want to ask a question then. Do you think that you can account for that and make sure that like the people that you're telling these jokes with are like vetted to a point where there's a shared understanding that like what is being said isn't actually racist?
Well,
yeah,
no,
I think
that's possible.
Okay,
yeah, of course she doesn't.
Hold on. Do you approve of race play and misogynistic words and things like that when having sex, consensual informed sex?
Why do you keep asking this question?
Well, it's literally good enough. Well, okay, then answer the question.
Right. Okay. When you do. Okay. I'm going to butcher my words, and maybe I'm not going to be like the most fluent here. Give me a break. Maybe who knows? In a week, I'll be able to answer like clearly. But here, like from the top of my head, and I apologize ahead of time if I butcher stuff or butcher. I don't know how to pronounce a word. Right. When it comes to like sex, right? That's a very consensual one-on-one thing that usually doesn't bleed out to other aspects of your life. We know here that like just like when it comes to like racist ideology or racist beliefs or like misogynistic thoughts, like it does bleed out. There's like study after study after study after study that talks about it.
Okay, so wouldn't that just be an argument for higher vetting processes amongst people that you have do jokes with?
Well, okay, here's the thing. There's like what type of vetting process are you even talking about?
What type of vetting process
do we realistic?
Okay, what kind of vetting process do we talk about when we have sex? Just copy it. By your own admission, you would just copy it. There you go.
Fucking true. God, fucking true. Holy shit. It's a fucking truths going on in here right now. God damn. Okay. This argument has floated a lot. This idea that like you can't have any idea of like what anybody thinks about you, I think is a ridiculously absurd bad faith made argument. Like when I go down to the dentist, okay, if I get put out to get my teeth removed.
No one's talking about any of that. No one's talking about.
Are you following the? I don't think you're educated enough to follow the conversation. So let the big boys talk, and then you can come back with your bullshit afterwards. Okay? Like this is literally exactly what we were just talking about. I don't know how the fuck you missed it. All right.
Okay.
So when we're talking about what I'm trying
to say is no, but we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is who actually watches this platform and sees you saying that shit.
No, that's not what we were talking about. Maybe you missed the last 5 minutes of the conversation.
That's what.
No, it wasn't. No, I invite you to rewind the video and rewatch.
If you want to have that conversation, we already tried to have it, and that's fine. But like that wasn't what we were just talking about.
Ian, stop fucking talking over me, dude. I'm really getting sick of this shit.
No, you've been talking over everybody, dude. I'm trying to give you enough talk time. You've had the most talk time out of anybody on here. So I don't know what you're like. What?
I've been quiet for like the last 10 minutes.
We're literally talking about how you vet people privately, okay? Yeah. And there are reasonable ways that we vet people to know what they may or may not do or may or may not.
I can't believe I'm actually listening to you try to tell me this.
Okay, listen to me then.
Dude, this guy makes me want to kill myself.
Okay,
you're one. your one-on-one
Go
relationship
ahead,
with someone is radically different than like, you know, I guess like how do you call it, like societal's like general.
And by the way,
can I use edgy jokes in a one-on-one circumstance? Then is that okay?
The reason that you're calling me uneducated in this conversation is because it just, I don't know what it is that gets under your skin when I say to you, actually, hang on, here's a bunch of studies that show that what you're saying is not correct. Rather than try to refute anything those studies say or try to look them up and find contravening evidence, what you're trying to do is come after me.
It doesn't really.
No, wait.
No, it's cool. It's cool. I got it.
The only reason I've returned ad homs is because
dude. It can't be that you're wrong.
Okay, let me know when he's done.
It can't be that you're wrong. It has to be that I'm stupid. I got it. I understand.
Okay, are you done? So I have not gone after you until you started questioning whether or not I'm educated enough to have the conversation. The fact, can I finish one sentence? Holy shit!
Yes, I questioned whether you had the education because I had to ask you. I asked you, do you understand where the phrase black comes from in relation to what we call black people?
First of all, you didn't ask me that. You answered a question with that. I asked you what black meant. You asked me what black meant. I gave you an answer. You didn't tell me why that answer was wrong. You asked me another question.
What is a black people? I said, what is a black people? You gave me a definition that was
I didn't tell you. You didn't ask me what a black people was. You asked me what does black mean.
And the origin of it. Oh, sure. If you want to go back to the video, I don't really give a shit. What I'm saying to you is that you gave me an answer that was not correct, and I'm asking you, okay, so how much?
You never gave me a different answer, by the way. Just letting you know, you still haven't.
I said
but
to you.
Regardless of that, I did contradict your studies. You brought up studies where people were being explicitly because I didn't even finish the first thing I started talking about before you started talking over me.
Because you can't absorb
information. You're the one that's missed half the fucking conversation, dude.
You just
okay?
talk over
You
people when you
explicitly.
ask
Oh no, dude, kick this bitch shit. Oh my god, please. Oh my god,
man.
Please just remove him. Please just fucking remove this dumb fuck, dude. Holy shit.
Oh, got it. So it's not.
There are more fucking people in this conversation than this guy has brain cells in his head. Please don't let him back in. Please don't let him back in.
Anybody can be correct. It's that everyone else has to be stupid. Got it. It's that every black dude that disagrees with you is fucking stupid.
Yeah, dude. It's all about the black dudes.
Wait,
high road black dudes who are more educated than you in the topic.
Fucking high road me, dude. High road me harder, man. You look. God, I got a fucking tear, man. Oh my god. Give another great fucking speech about how horribly fucking racist I am, man. Oh, dude. Fucking clap, man. You're getting so much fucking social credit right now. Amen, brother. Keep going. You have anything else? You want to virtue signal anything else, dude?
The fact that you're like this right now tells me that you're possibly like this in your personal life.
I am, dude. You got it, man. You fucking dude. You know psychology too. You psychoanalyze me. Do you know? Like?
No. I'm just saying. If this is how you behave to a total stranger,
do you like fucking read tarot cards as well?
Fucking life, and the fact that people look up to you is kind of scary.
Why did James come back? Hold on, I'm so confused.
He's gonna say the N-word after this conversation in private. Oh my god.
Good one, Hassan. So I did refute some of your studies. One of the problems I had with some of the stuff you were citing at me was that some of your
With what?
I'm literally telling you right now. Okay. One of the examples that you gave me, in one of these studies was the idea that a parent was saying things like, I don't remember the exact example, but it was something like, oh, I think that Mexicans are lazy or whatever. That's not a joke that I tell. That's not a joke.
That wasn't it. That wasn't actually it.
Tell me what it was.
That wasn't it. She thought the mother thought it was a joke. And what she said was when she was watching Fear Factor with her mom was watching a black woman contestant on the show that had to eat gross things like eyeballs, intestines, etc. And she said, well, she's probably used to that because she's black. The mom thought it was a total joke. She thought it was funny.
That's not a funny joke. That's just being racist.
She thought it was, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter
whether or not she's saying or not saying the joke, that's a racist person that thinks that whatever black people or Mexicans eat eyeballs. That's the problem. There isn't the fact that she made the joke. The problem is she's literally fucking racist, and the fact that it's a parent saying it to a kid. Do you think I make these jokes around my son? That I go to my kid and I'm like, oh, like I hate women and black people, and here's the N-word. LOL.
What I'm trying to say to you is that you also using the N-word around other people is the exact same paradigm. It's the same.
Not as a kid.
So you think that all words, you think that in any context use the N-word, it's always the exact same?
I didn't say that though.
You're telling me it's the same paradigm.
I've been very clear about what I've been saying this entire time. You keep trying to steer me over to say
you're the one pivoting so hard.
No, but I've been saying this. This entire time.
Hold on, Destiny, let him finish.
So what you're saying is, but I've never done that.
Okay, let's see if you can. Okay, sure. I'll just ask you a question.
Using that in private conversation reinforces social norms that then escapes those circles and then affects people of color in ways that you don't even see and aren't privy to, is what I've been saying this entire time. And the fact that you keep on trying to steer this elsewhere tells me that you actually don't have anything to refute that. And the reason I know you don't is because I've been studying this for literally years and I can't find anything that contravenes it.
Are you familiar with Jesse Lee Peterson? Do you know who that is?
Yes, I know who he is.
Okay, well, this is fucked now because of your, I guess, impression of me. But if you had to choose if one person was allowed to tell like an edgy, racist joke involving, we'll say Mexicans, who do you think would you trust to tell it to a more responsible group of people? Me or Jesse Lee Peterson? If only one of us could do it.
I wouldn't trust either of you.
Yeah, you got to choose one, dude.
No, I don't. I really don't trust either.
Okay, yeah, okay. So you want to talk about like pivoting and dodging fucking questions? Well,
That's
there it is. Because you know there's a correct answer there, and you don't want to say it because it undermines every single fucking thing you've just said.
It means that I don't fucking trust you.
It's all right, dude.
I've only known you.
Okay, what about Bernie Sanders?
What about Bernie Sanders?
What about Bernie Sanders and GOP?
Okay, but the thing is, if it's either of them telling a joke about Mexicans, I wouldn't trust either of them either. You know why?
Because they're
not Mexican people.
He won't answer. Okay, wait. What about black people? Bernie Sanders or Jesse Lee Peterson? Who would you trust more to tell a joke and make it like? Choose one. If you had to choose one.
No, I don't trust either. The thing is, there's no. Oh my god.
Oh, dude.
See, this is the difference in understanding that you simply don't have. I don't trust somebody like Jesse Lee Peterson because Jesse Lee Peterson performs actions that benefit him by reinforcing white supremacy. So no, I wouldn't trust him.
And what about Bernie Sanders?
And I wouldn't trust Bernie Sanders either. You know why? Because if Bernie Sanders was to make a joke like that, then everything that I thought I knew about him would be wrong. So no, I wouldn't trust him to tell the joke, and I would hope that he wouldn't want to tell it. So I'm not sure why we're getting into this conversation because this is entirely ridiculous. It's like, is this what people sit around and talk to each other all day on the internet about?
This is what, dude. You stop saying that when you talked with your friend before coming on here about talking about this. Why are you so performative?
Because
do you believe in anything? Do you have any actual fucking values?
But because I do organizational work with people out in real life that are affected
what does that
by
have
this
to
shit.
do with this?
And it just
that are affected by whether or not white fucking geeks say the N-word in private? That's what your activism is about? Holy shit! What movements do you march with? I'm super curious. What, black people against harmful gamer words upstairs in their bedrooms? Like, what's the name of the fucking organization? Like, Jesus Christ!
Wow, actually, I started an organization to teach kids coding.
Yeah, his credentials speak for themselves.
Okay, well then don't sit here and pretend like you've come on here and you've been ambushed by this topic when you clearly agreed to talk about it beforehand with your friend, try to back off into like, well, I talk about these issues all the time in your life.
This is what I mean when I say you don't listen. I've only known you a couple of hours, and I can tell you don't listen.
And this is what I mean when I say you're not educated.
So the reason I know you didn't listen to what I just said is because I can't believe this is what people sit around and talk about. Not that you actually sit around and have conversations, but that you have conversations such that you lead yourself to these kind of conclusions where it's like, okay, well, it's completely okay for me to say, and until you come up with an argument that can prove otherwise, I'm just going to continue to do it. You would rather accept that than accept somebody else's friendship. That is something that
is your contention? Wait, hold on. Is your contention? Because I've heard this. Is your contention that he's trying to like philosophize some sort of like justification for saying the N-word? Like
what I'm trying to say is that if you actually cared about people, and somebody who is close to you came to you and said, this thing that you say actually hurts me, and the fact that you would say it on this very public platform that it hurts me, that you would stick closer to your guns and what you call your principles over accepting this person's friendship, to me is completely foreign. That's what
about if my parents come to me and tell me that it hurts them that I'm an atheist? What do I do?
Go ahead, Irrelevant. What's up?
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna go with a more extreme example.
Your atheism doesn't.
Cormentine, I handed it off to Irrelevant. Hold on. Let Irrelevant speak.
You said what if, and I told you the answer to what if.
Come on.
What about a more extreme example? What if you have a white friend, because you say you have white friends, comes forward and says, you know what, man, when you talk about black people being suppressed by the white supremacy, that really fucks with my head.
They probably should fuck with their head because they are participant in that system.
So this is called begging the question.
So it's not intrinsically bad to have your friend say, yo, I don't like that.
Yep.
It is intrinsically bad when the reason that your friend feels like that is because they're already oppressed by a system that subordinates them, and then you saying that adds to their feeling of subordination. So yes, that's why it's bad. You're trying to separate feeling.
What if white people feel like the system is suppressing them?
You're trying to separate how a person feels from the broader context of society, and that's just not possible. Like, we're not automatons. We're not programmed.
Okay,
so we can't flip our feelings on and off.
Correct.
And the fact that oh my gosh, I really wish you would like read Joy DeGruy's post-traumatic slavery syndrome, because this is explained entirely. Is that within a system that already beats you down and already psychologically traumatizes you, when you get that from somebody who you consider a friend and is close to you, that adds to that trauma. That's what hurts. So you can't say this is the same as somebody's parents coming to you and saying, hey, you saying that your atheist hurts me, because it's not part of a dominant system that oppresses people. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay, so you understand that when you originally came out him with that argument, you were making the argument that he shouldn't do it because his friend said so. Now we have an extra premise to work with.
That's an additional reason why.
Yeah, an extra premise.
The original reason why I came out and said this in the first place, once it was brought up and Cole came into the conversation, was because when people are watching this platform, and that's the reason that I even agreed to have this conversation in the first place. If people are watching this platform and seeing a conversation like this happen, then people who could add to the conversation, people who could be part of the movement, people who could also be content creators, end up feeling very unwelcome because this is an incredibly toxic atmosphere to operate from. That's what I've been saying the whole time.
I think it's an incredibly toxic atmosphere for everybody to expect me to hate Destiny just because he says the N-word in private. Does that mean I shouldn't?
Who asked you to do that? Did I say that?
No, literally people. There are people that do this. So wait. Hold on. I'm going to use your argument. So should I just not speak up?
What do you mean?
Should I just not speak up about the fact that everybody thinks that I should fall in line and just say that the N-word in private is therefore I should feel offended by this?
I didn't say that.
Okay, so I should speak up. So I should be talking about it.
I think you have a unique opinion, which is why I keep asking you about certain things, and I'm just simply trying to understand like what you would consider to be unacceptable and what you don't consider to be unacceptable.
Well, I think that's a good question. Let me ask Irrelevant that. Like, so when do you think?
When I asked you last time, you pivoted to like me wearing fucking commie hammer and sickle.
Yeah,
or some shit,
I can go back over.
Pivot.
I can go back over that if you don't
let's
explain.
Just go back to that.
Well, I wanted to ask you if you want to touch on that. That's fine. But I wanted to ask you. So fuck, I totally forgot. Just go ahead. Go ahead and answer.
Okay, so the reason I made the analogy to the USSR iconography is people will necessarily think because you just simply by the very fact that you have that kind of iconography around, there are many people that will be turned off to your ideas and have a negative opinion of you, correct? Whether it be misguided or not. Don't think that you're pro-Stalin or what have you.
But the problem isn't people thinking that I'm pro-Stalin, or at least in this case, when we're talking about the N-word, the problem is, like, I'm public with that. I'm public with the socialist iconography, as you guys have said, and I've had numerous conversations about this. Hammer and sickle is widely adopted by active political parties all around the world, and I think that having a conversation around that is always going to be more informative than having a conversation as to why saying the N-word in private is good. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's no utility to the N-word, but there is a utility to destigmatizing the hammer and sickle, and maybe even the xenophobia that is associated with it.
There is no utility to destigmatizing mass murder.
Well, wait, who was?
There's nothing. There's nothing to.
You literally have an American flag behind you, dude. It's completely irrelevant because you're a giant hypocrite. Okay,
you can go on about that if you want, but you're talking about harms in public versus harms in private. You're conceding that there's a harm in public there. That's everybody here agrees that is more harmful than the harm in private.
No, I'm not. I never conceded
the dead horse over and over.
Go off,
you're not understand what I'm saying.
My man, going
on. Harm to the Soviet iconography or the hammer.
I disagree. Do you think people from the Ukraine think that there isn't any kind of like negative shit with that? Like the Holodomor, people who like might have had people that like grew up or were descendants of those people might not hate you for having that kind of iconography?
Do you think black people feel some type of way about the American flag? Is the same exact question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, we do already. We do that with the Confederate flag. We do that with the Confederate flag.
Position to a political,
do you defend people using the
political icon, with the exception of literally Nazi Germany, is usually really silly.
Do you defend the Confederate flag?
The Confederate flag.
Oh, sorry, and the Confederate flag as well. Sorry.
Do you defend the Confederate flag?
Explicitly.
No.
Those are the two. You're right. The Nazi iconography and the Confederate flag. Those are the two: slavery and the Holocaust.
So you think it's
the two things that everyone widely agrees is bad? Okay, and I agree it's bad as well. There are plenty of elements of the Soviet era that I also disagree with, and I talk about it quite frequently. There's plenty of things that the Chinese government does that I fucking absolutely abhor and criticize all the time. I'm literally wearing a Trump hat right now as well. So my point is, I'm doing this publicly, and I can have a conversation about it. But when we're talking about the N-word, there is literally no utility or no political message behind like using the N-word. There's no positive conversation.
Or maybe that's for you to determine.
Do you agree with that, Irrelevant? Well, I want to ask Irrelevant. Irrelevant, do you agree with that?
Wait, hold on. So then make your case as to why saying the N-word is good then, and then follow that up by why won't you say it in public then?
Okay,
Irrelevant, do you agree?
So, I mean, I think there's a lot of utility, but I think that you were being a little bit hyperbolic because I imagine you would agree to the idea that, for instance, the N-word shouldn't be stripped away from like movies like 12 Years a Slave or anything like that are historical.
No, of course not. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about a public figure who understands that he has a responsibility to his own audience, defending his use of the N-word in private, and that is literally the what he does in the private leaking into the public. Like
well, I mean, you could stop that by not asking him questions on it anymore.
Or he could stop that by not saying it.
Go back to the same
he won't say it, or he won't say it again.
Okay, and then here's
like
the problem.
This is turning into a conversation about integrity, and it's really shocking to me because the integrity of what? It's like saying, "Oh, well, we're fighting for states' rights." Okay, states' rights for what? To own slaves? The integrity to say the N-word?
Yeah.
What's up, Pixie?
I'm sorry, but it's just like I know that there's no real solution, but I just like I didn't get like a clear answer from you guys. I feel like. Right, because it's either this, right? You either, as like I said before, you either you say like, oh yeah, I say the N-word in private, like deal with it. But it's already, by saying that you already have it out in public, people already know, and people are gonna use your arguments to defend their fucking racist beliefs or whatever. Or you lie about it and you're like, oh no, I don't say it anymore, and you actually continue to use it in private, and then that makes you like a grifter or a fake or whatever. So, then the other solution that was proposed is just telling, like, I guess, like, black people or people who don't like it, just deal with it. Stop asking questions about it, which doesn't sound very right either. So how do you get out of, like, this moral conundrum or predicament that
it doesn't sound right because you've already begged the conclusion that it's wrong. Because I would argue it sounds just as strange to me for you to make a demand about asking what I do in my private time. That's really fucking weird to me. That you're going to come up to me like, what do you say in your private time? Tell me what kind of jokes you say so I can tell you whether or not they offend me or not. What the fuck? No way, dude. That is so
irrelevant. Lance, go ahead. Hold on, Lance had something to say.
I was just going to say, it's because I think you're painting the fact that leftists are trying to get you to stop saying in your private life, and we're trying to like control your speech. Or
nobody cares. That's the thing. Nobody actually cares.
I don't give two fucks what you do. You can scream it at all the chairs you want, or scream it at cats, just like H.P. Lovecraft used to do. At the end of the day, though, it's because you said it publicly on your show that is going to normalize it for other people.
I disagree. Right. I don't think that just saying that
you can disagree all you like. I cited you information that shows
you didn't cite shit. You have no fucking idea what the fuck you're citing. You're too stupid to read the fucking site as you're even citing at me.
Wait, Cormantine.
Jesus Christ.
You caught one example and you latched onto it
because you gish gallop like 7 fucking studies at me because you're not interested in a conversation. You're just trying to fucking steamroll me with a bunch of dumb random shit.
Fine. If you'd like to look up a study, all right, you can go ahead and look up Greenberg and Pazynski's "The Effect of an Overheard Ethnic Slur on Evaluations of the Target How to Spread a Social Disease." Because I talk about this stuff quite a bit, I actually have quite a bit of information. So if it feels like gish galloping to you, it's because you haven't actually got the information that I've got.
But I can tell just by what you're saying that you don't have the education to say it. Look at that.
That's fair. That's fair to say, Cormantine, but like I know I've talked to you before, and as an educator, you've said that like it doesn't really do much good to come in and just cite a bunch of studies and shit like that, right? It's much easier to talk about like appeal to like values and broader concepts and stuff.
But that's the problem. Right? How can you appeal to values with somebody who doesn't have any?
You have no. You're so fucking stupid,
that's not
dude.
true. Hold on. Just because is
one of them is saying the N-word in private. If it maximizes.
Okay.
This is like character assassination 101, and
we all
listen to you, dude. Fuck out of here, man.
Why do you yell all the time? Like, is this how you?
Because you're dumb as fuck, and it's upsetting to me, and I like yelling.
Well, it comes across as dumb to you because you can't admit that you're wrong on shit. So
no, it comes across as dumb to me because it's pretty fucking
stupid. Instead of admitting the possibility that you're wrong, you just want to.
I already admitted the possibility that I could be wrong. What would it take to convince you that you're wrong?
Well, Cormantine, you agree that by citing those studies, it doesn't really do much to further the conversation, right?
You didn't. Neither of you let me answer, and I said I can't appeal to values for somebody that doesn't have any. So what I'm trying to say to you is this. When I say that he doesn't have any values, this is not something that he actually values. I don't really care what he believes because it's not actually about him. And I've been saying the whole time, it's not actually about him. If he wants to do that in his private time and he thinks that's okay, then whatever, I can't stop him. But what I'm saying though is that it's irresponsible to come on a public platform and be like, okay, well, this is something I do all the time, and not add any provisos that this actually can cause harm because he doesn't think that it causes harm. What I'm saying to him is that it actually does, and there are reams of evidence that prove that.
Let me ask Destiny then. In certain contexts, you would agree, or would you agree, I guess, that like saying the N-word in private does have some harm in certain contexts,
of course,
right?
Absolutely it could. Yeah, of course. You could misjudge somebody's character. You might be stupid and you're overheard by somebody, which is totally on you. Yeah, sure.
And so, like, I want to ask the question then, like, at what point, like, what At what point does it become problematic to say the N-word in private? Like, what would qualify that?
I mean, for any behavior that we have when we interact with personal, when we have like personal relationships, it's kind of up to us to figure out like what we're comfortable with or what we're comfortable with not saying or doing with other people. So for instance, like there are certain people, I'll use the sex example again because we were on that earlier, right? If we talk about like rape play, there are certain people that have histories that I would never be comfortable having that type of interaction with, just because I know they might have like some engagement with it that I consider to be not healthy, or they might take that and they might move outside of like a personal environment with it, the same way that we would with some type of private language. And to pretend that this is even a solved thing, like, isn't even necessarily true. Like, even people that do this kind of stuff performatively, publicly, have issues with knowing whether or not they should do it. Chris Rock has walked back on certain stuff he said publicly. Dave Chappelle has wondered about some skits that he's done publicly, whether or not they're good or bad. So I mean, like, it's the idea that there's some like hard and clear line of like you should never do this or you should do this is I think ridiculous. And to mark it all off as like valueless and racist and act like there's some clear like line that separates right and wrong, I think is absolutely ridiculous for this conversation.
What would you say irrelevant to that question, to the same question?
I mean, more or less, I think it's the exact more or less.
I find something really interesting.
Let Irrelevant speak, Cormandine, please.
I just want to say one thing is that he names comedians often, but
Hold
doesn't
on, I'm
actually
muting this
name
guy.
any black.
I'm sorry.
He names like.
There, I muted Cormandine.
Okay,
Go ahead,
so
Irrelevant.
more or less, I just wanted to go through and I wanted to talk to each person point by point on the same argument that I gave Pixie and that same argument that I've given every single time about justifying the use of it in sexual relationships instead of justifying it when it comes to jokes, because more or less we're arguing over bullshit instead of actually getting to the point, right? So, like, for instance, Hasan, do you agree or disagree with the idea with the use of race play, rape play, or BDSM, or humiliation or cuckoldry in sexual acts? Do you believe that it should not be done?
Oh, consensually? No, I don't have a problem with it. No, okay, but I also think that, like, I mean, and if you're asking me, like, if Destiny can say the N-word when he's doing, like, I don't know, kinky rape play with like a black girl, I don't know. I don't think there's a. If she consents to it, then go right ahead, go off.
Okay, so why?
But the difference here is, again, the difference is not what someone does in the privacy of his own home. The difference here is what someone is defending when they're like the N-word. So
I couldn't talk about said.
The N-word on its own is entirely different, and when you leave it up to context, and when you open it up and say, I use the N-word all the time in private, is entirely different than a very specific case that you're referencing right now.
Okay, hold on. So
that's why I'm trying to narrow it down to like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Hasan just defended the private use of the N-word. I love that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So like, hold on.
What do you mean? I already said that before. I literally have been saying that from the beginning of this conversation. I'm sorry if you're.
Amen, brother. So consenting parties, if it doesn't leak, it's good. Thank you.
No, that's come on, Destiny.
Wait, that's what you just said. I love it.
I'm trying to be as nice as
bullshit,
nice as
you're trying to be as nice. Coming in here saying, "Oh, I just want to argue to say the N-word." Fuck out of here, dude.
Everybody is trying to be really nice to you.
I literally said it's contextually. It could be contextually appropriate, which is precisely why I asked our relevant, like, what are the contexts that he would consider it to be inappropriate? It's so fucked up that you're like totally walking over my original point. My point is harm reduction in a similar sense that you engage in harm reduction when you don't say the N-word in public. Okay, that's literally the surf's point as well. That's what we've been trying to get across.
Stop gaslighting me. The first thing that you said was I belittle black people in private. Don't try to fucking gaslight me about what you have or haven't said in this conversation.
Wait. What are you talking about?
Steven,
like
when you come in here,
that you belittle black people in public? I mean, in private?
That's literally what you said in terms of like using the N-word. That I'm like,
are you just talking to your fan base now so they can fucking?
Does this make a difference?
Or did you hear anything I said?
Let me do my one quick spiel and then I'm done.
This is so uncharitable, dude.
This
Come
is
on.
why I'm being uncharitable when you're saying I'm just trying to argue just to say the N-word, dude. Come on. Okay. So somebody linked me. Hold on. So no, I'm not. You don't. Do you really not understand? Can you tell me what argument I'm making? Actually, hold on.
Okay.
What do you think my argument is?
The argument that you're making right now is that one should be under specific circumstances with consenting adults should be able to say the N-word in private.
No,
and that's
no.
Is that not what the argument is?
It's about edgy jokes that you wouldn't say in private versus public. It's not just the N-word.
Expand that to edgy humor. Look,
no, I'm not expanding that to edgy humor. That's what it's always been about. You're the one that wants to make it specifically about the N-word.
I know, but we're working off of the soundbite where you literally said, I say the N-word all the time.
That's one soundbite. I've made public posts talking about my stance on language. If you want to focus on the one soundbite, you can focus on that, but that's not what the broader conversation is about.
Okay. All right. I understand the defense of edgy jokes in private. I also listen to edgy podcasts and make edgy jokes myself. The N-word is it literally says topic N-word in private underneath us.
Wait. You just said that you make edgy jokes in private that you wouldn't make publicly?
Oh, no, I make them publicly. No, I make edgy jokes in public that I make in private.
Wait, when you say you make edgy jokes publicly, you mean when you say edgy jokes, my specific use is like jokes that could be damaging towards certain minorities. You make those types of jokes publicly.
Like Italians.
What? Wait, so what the fuck? Wait, so why? So is it okay? So actually, you know what? That's a whole other conversation that I don't even want to go into.
Okay.
Wait, real quick. I really want to do this real quick with quarantine.
Already exposed me for my fredophobia.
With quarantine, with quarantine, like, so he threw like a bunch of studies at me, and I responded to the last one because it sounded bullshit. Okay, with Andre, and it sounded like bullshit to me. Somebody linked me, the study that he told me to look up about how overhearing slurs impacts how you view people. So this experiment had to do with 4 Confederates that were having a debate with a black person, and when that black person's performance was evaluated after, one person evaluated the performance using a racial slur and one person didn't. I can't believe you would present to me this study with 4 people so disingenuously that you and this is the whole point. No, shut the fuck up. I can't believe that you would cite. I can't believe that you would gish gallop the fuck. I can't believe that you would gish gallop the fuck out of me with studies and expect me not to look a single one of them up, and then when I do, I find out that you're throwing some bullshit at me like this to try to make your fucking argument.
That's not how you read journals. You read the footnotes and then get the underlying references that they use to come to their conclusions. So I'm not just citing this study. I'm citing this study plus the other studies that are behind it.
Then why wouldn't you just cite the studies behind it?
Okay, all right. So here's another one.
No. You already fucked up. I don't give a fuck what you're gonna cite me. No, I'm done with you, dude. I'm done. You're a bad faith actor. You're just trying to fucking machine gun out your bullshit ass NPC talking.
Why are you yelling at me? I don't give a fuck,
dude.
Why are you yelling at me?
Because you're about to say a whole bunch of shit I don't fucking care
about. You're yelling at me because
I don't need the psychoanalysis, my man. It's all good. Don't worry. I don't need it. It's okay.
You're yelling at me because you don't do this work in your own private life.
That's right, man. I don't engage in any of this work, okay? I have no background.
Hold on, Destiny.
You're so right, dude. Mr. teaches children how to code. Tell me that I have no background in any of this. Thank you, dude.
I'm just saying, but this is writing work that I do for a living. So when I read
you said you teach children to code.
Why are you yelling at me? You asked me what kind of activism I do in real life. I gave you one example. Like, why are you upset about that?
Why wouldn't you give me an example that maybe supports your appeal to authority a little better than you teaching children to code?
Because that's one that came to mind. I've done many activisms in my life. That's one that I'm very proud of. Like, you asked me what I do in activism, I gave you an example. Holy shit. Do I need to give you one that's good enough to make you like me? I don't really care whether you do or not.
It's not about liking me. It's about the fact that you cited the activism.
But I don't have anything
some sort of authoritative thing that lets you speak. No, don't tell me that. I'm telling you to prove shit. You cited this to me. Don't blame me for your dumb fuck mistake. That you cited some irrelevant bullshit and got called out on it.
All right, hold on. Go ahead and respond. Okay. Go ahead and respond, Quarantine, and just make it quick, okay?
No, Ian. You know what? It's cool. I think I'm kind of at my limit here. Like, I've been yelled at for probably about 3 hours now, and this is.
I'm literally being called racial slurs right now for literally I can leak. You want me to leak you logs right now?
I mean, like, what guys, do you mean? We're on the internet. Stop being fucking babies. Literally, everyone's getting death threats. Okay, shut the fuck up. Like,
I already have fucking tweets at me. It's fucking insane.
All right, come on. I am too. Okay, Mandy, you know what the fuck's going on?
I barely said a word. Somebody said they literally wanted.
I wouldn't say this to random people. It's because I know Are Relevant and I know Destiny and I know that they have they're bigger than this.
What's the next topic, guys?
Hold on, wait. I'm sorry, Pixie. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Pixie. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just like
were you interested in what I had to say before everyone yelled over me, or what?
I asked you, and you said you weren't interested, dude. Come on. I asked you to speak, and you said no.
He was just signaling, dude. You didn't actually mean that.
Oh my god. No, Cormantine, you missed your chance. Pixie, go ahead.
Are you sure? Like, I don't mind
I was
waiting.
literally just trying to say goodbye to you. That's it. Like,
Oh, now he's fucking guilt tripping you so hard, my dude.
Can we go back to what we were talking about originally?
Okay, I just wanna say one thing that like what people were talking about before about like the whole like race play.
Hold on, wait, before you go, hold on. I'm sorry, Pixie. Cormentine, look.
Yep.
I respect you, dude. I'm sorry that this ended up in a shit show. I thought this would go a lot better than it did, but do you want to go ahead and shout yourself out before you go?
No, I don't really feel like shouting myself right now. I'm actually not like proud of anything that happened here, and I really hope that in the future, if we want to have these kinds of conversations, it doesn't look anything like this. I think this is actually.
I'd love to have you on the podcast, or not podcast, on my show.
Let's talk about this offline, dude. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. You take it easy.
Yep.
You have a good one.
Can we go back to the
Wait,
sex
let
play
Pixie
now?
talk what she was saying. Literally every person is talking.
Yeah, I want Pixie to go ahead. I had to interrupt her there.
Okay, if you guys like, I just wanted to like bring up what people were talking about earlier about like race play and rape play. For me personally, yeah, no, I actually do think race play is like very sketch. And although it's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to like freaking crucify somebody for doing something else with like a consensual adult, where they're technically both like subjects and objects at the same time, whatever. At least like, you know, I still think it's like fucking sketch, right? Like I don't think it's necessarily like a right thing to do because you're still fetishizing somebody over their race. And when it comes to like rape play itself, you know, you can't equate rape play to like actual rape at all, right? Because the whole point of rape play is that there's still consent there, right? There's still an underlying consent. It's more like, you know, acting whatever about it. But
I mean, there's consent between two consenting adults when they're saying the N-word amongst one another as well.
Right. Yeah.
Pixie.
I'm gonna head out
not
too,
relevant,
everybody.
but don't you think that there's consent there too?
It's been
no, but
what I'm
okay.
gonna leave as well. Okay.
Yeah, you want to go ahead and shout yourself out, dude?
I think everyone knows already. Twitch.tv/TheSurfTV. And I gotta say, I agree with Cormentine. Like this, I don't think this is the way to have these kind of discussions.
I agree 100%. Cormentine shouldn't be here. He can't have the talk.
A whole bunch of people screaming at each other.
Come on, Destiny.
Man, what happened?
This guy tweeted right before he came on Tuesday, October 22nd, 7 p.m. PST. Cole, James Cash, and Andre, whatever versus Destiny. No, dude, this guy is 100%
I do
a fucking
agree.
grifter. I don't know if this guy has a single fucking spine in his body. What a piece of
I
shit.
do want to say that like I agree that if it's gonna just end up like this, it probably shouldn't have been talked about. But Cormentine and Cole, James Cash, and like everybody that participated and knew that this was gonna be a topic, like literally agreed to it. So I don't know, like the fact that Cormentine and Cole James Cash came on and weren't able to like adequately advocate for their ideas is actually really disappointing, because I really do agree with a huge.
He was so calm.
All right, white guy. All right, white guy.
He's literally advocating.
No. The thing is,
can I ask the Surfs a question? I'm super curious because even though like you talk shit about me, whatever, I do respect you. I think you're cool. Okay, even if you fucking talk shit about me, right? Do you really think that guy like randomly interjecting? You don't have the education to talk about this. You don't know what you're talking about. I don't think you think that that's like a good faith way to approach a conversation.
I think a bad faith way was just to constantly tell him that he was dumb and stupid.
You know, I only did that after he was literally telling me. He was literally. So you're not going to call him out on it, but you are going to call me out on doing it after he was doing it to me.
After he was doing it to you. I was here for the whole 3 hours. Like
you didn't hear him do that to me at all? You didn't hear him do that to me at all?
He might have said it once at the start. No, sorry.
All right, dude. Never mind. I'm done.
Okay.
I don't care. I don't give a fuck. I don't care about this guy. Fucking, I don't care.
Back to the combo, because like there's a significant difference between what our relevant was saying and what we were talking about in regards to like something that you can defend publicly. Your like kink stuff that you do in the bedroom is acceptable, and you can absolutely defend it. People might not like it, but you can absolutely defend it in public. Just opening it up in that way, though, as far as like I say the N-word, I know we're going back to the same clip, but saying that you say the N-word in private all the time is entirely different than that. That's my point. That's always been my point.
Okay, so is it if I mean the clip is out there?
Well defined. So. Like what you're talking about is not an unacceptable thing at all. Does that make sense?
Destiny, I don't know if he's still listening or he's just screaming at his audience, but he said that you're uneducated on the subject. He didn't say that you yourself are stupid. That's the difference.
Oh, Esteban muted me to shit talk me. That's nice.
Well,
I was shit talking like 3 or 4 of you, not just
so
don't worry.
This is what I agree with Cormentine on. I agree. Most people here, myself included, probably haven't studied this to the degree that Cormentine has, and Cormentine actually has a lot of really good like information on the subject. He's really well learned on it, and that's why I really I mean, it's true. That's why I respect his opinion. But no. Hold on, Destiny. Hold on. Just because he wasn't able to engage in this sort of conversation in like a conducive manner, that like doesn't mean that he's like not smart. I'm not trying to say that he's not smart or doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm just saying that the way that he tried to like conduct his conversations in here when talking about it wasn't really a good way to have a conversation about this issue. It didn't really add anything to the conversation, but like to appeal to your authority or how much knowledge or how read you are, or how if you don't read a book you can't talk about the subject, or try to like when people were like trying to discredit irrelevance blackness, which has happened like multiple times now, is like really insulting. And that's the only issue I really have with Quarantine at the end of the day. But and especially that fucking Cole James, I don't know, dude, like that guy just didn't add anything to this conversation. That was really disappointing.
Okay, Surf, before you, Lance, sorry, before you leave, can I just ask one it's just real quick. Is your main point of contention that Destiny or other people in general say that they say it in private on a public platform, not that they say it in private at all?
The first one. Because it normalizes it.
Gotcha. All right.
All right, bye everybody.
Yep.
Bye guys.
And Hasan, is that your position as well?
What was the position? I wasn't listening. I was reading how hard Destiny's audience was molding at me, saying I'm bad faith. But what's up?
Honestly, at this point, I don't know if I want to have this conversation anymore irrelevant, especially
because
you're the only black dude to like really represent.
Hey, wait, can we do this link right here? Because people have gassed the fuck out of me so hard. Everybody can click and listen to that. Literally, as soon as you came in, you said I was belittling black people. I have never been gaslit in a conversation harder in my entire fucking life. Even when debating alt-writers and race realists. Fucking holy shit.
Are you talking about saying the N-word? Because like saying the N-word and why people would get upset about it in that context is literally belittling two black people.
Then why did you just deny saying that when you came in earlier? You're doing it again.
Because using the N-word and defending your...
Wait, we're not talking about that.
You use the N-word is, of course, going to be belittling to black people.
So then just say that. Then don't deny saying that you said I was belittling black people.
No,
now when I
because
show
the way you made it seem
now
like
trying to justify what you did say.
Destiny is just busy belittling black people.
Hold on, follow this, okay? I don't know if this is hard for you, okay?
Okay.
So earlier, wait, I'm gonna walk you through this. I'm gonna
give you guys a minute to settle this, and then we're fucking done, okay? You guys got 60 seconds. I'm counting down right now.
Okay, listen, it's okay. Dude, I have an 8-year-old. I can walk you through this real slow. Earlier, I said when you came in here, you told me immediately that I was belittling black people. And then you said, I didn't say that. Now I just showed you did say that. And you're saying, well, the reason I said that was because you are. Do you understand the problem there?
You were bullying black people in public, okay? I never said you were bullying black people in public. I'm saying that black people can feel belittled when you are talking about your usage of the N-word in private, when you're defending that in public, okay? But you understand that. Why are you bringing this, dude?
That is true.
No, you guys have just been gaslighting like fucking crazy in here. It's
like
insane, dude. Not irrelevant. That the Cormanty or whatever guy is going to sit here and like ad hom the fuck at me over and over again, and then the surf like, I didn't hear him saying it all.
He's gone. Stop crying. He's gone. Let's have a real conversation about this.
A real conversation. Okay, let's talk about how Destiny just wants to say the N-word over and over again in private. That's what you're here for, right?
I mean, that's what you said. And if that's not your position, at all,
all right, you guys get 10 seconds.
If you want to change that conversation to, hey, that's not what I meant at all.
All I want to say is I love black people. That's what I got. My man Jesse Lee Peterson was right. I love black people. That's all I should fucking say. That's all I'm gonna say on it. Okay.
All right, we're gonna go to the next subject. Is everybody down to move on to the next subject?
I'm down to move on to the next subject. Can I just fucking can I hear
another last word in? What? I love black people. That's what I said.
Come on, dude.
You don't think I do?
I don't know anymore.
There you go. Well, then you better not tell any of those edgy jokes to me. Don't say Fredo or whatever, because I might hate Italians too. Okay, be consistent.
Yeah. All right. Listen, that's your moral position. So
I don't have morals. Remember, that's what Corman died or whatever.
Okay, but said. Am I No, but I'm not him. So why are you arguing against the literal fucking straw man? Like he's not even here. Stop crying about it. Let's have this conversation that we were meant to have originally, which is. If your position is no longer, I say the N-word in private all the time, and it's simply, I make edgy jokes sometimes in private, then of course I'm not going to have a fucking problem with that.
You literally cry to journalists about being taken out of context.
All right, I'm done. All right, so I muted Destiny and muted Hasan. You guys can handle this on your own stream, all right? I know there's like, I don't know. You guys can make up on your own stream. All right. We're going to go to the next subject. Let me unmute you guys. All right. We're good now? All right, cool. We're good. All right. So let's talk about, God, Jesus Christ. How do we even fucking follow this
up? What are we following that one up with?
I don't know. I have no fucking clue what to follow this up with.
I heard you were sexist.
We're not going to talk about that. We've had enough fucking drama here.
The two pro private language people were the only ones that let the girl talk a single fucking time, and that Cormandid and fucking Hassan were railing over
you
her
fucking
like
love identity politics so much.
Hey, you like it when it defends you? I'm just pointing it out.
Cuck. Oh, you're
pointing it out.
You're so hypocritical, dude.
I'm not hypocritical. I love women too. I love women and black people.
Cool, dude. God damn. Oh,
All right.
Booty judge,
All
right? Oh my god.
All right. So I know this next subject is probably
fucking cuck.
All right. So we're gonna talk about the Democratic primary. All right, guys. You guys want to talk about this? This is actually
hell yeah,
important.
Warren for life. Amen.
Okay. Hashtag Warren. Okay, got you. Yeah. So recently there was the Democratic debates about like a week or so ago, and
am I unmuted? I don't know.
Yeah, you're unmuted, dude.
Oh,
You're
okay.
good.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
Destiny's only nice to girls when he's questing them, is what I wanted to say. But let's talk about
what I am. I'm already DM'd her, actually.
All right.
You got it, dude. Look at those. Look at those good. Look at these good faith arguments.
You can play that game, right?
All right, we're talking about the Democratic primary, guys. So some memes have come out since the Dem debates.
I'm gonna be.
Right.
Can I say something? Can I say something about Elizabeth Warren? Honestly,
You
the
need to
only
hurry-
reason that
hurry
I
up.
support her is because I'm questioner, baby. Amen. I can't wait to get into that 75-year-old. Oh, that's it, Hassan. You got me, dude.
Apparently, she's into some kinky shit. So I don't know. Maybe the sex is good.
I like Elizabeth
That it's
Warren.
consensual. I don't
I
race
like person of color.
Hey, man,
All
who
right,
doesn't
so
support her?
I'm gonna
Who
go ahead
doesn't
and just
support that?
I'm gonna throw out the question and just leave it broad for the. What's your guys' takeaway from these Dem debates? Like, who's the winner? Who's the loser? How's it looking? I don't know.
I just don't understand why Elizabeth Warren wouldn't own up to the fact that she was going to increase middle class taxes to make healthcare more affordable. I mean, Bernie made the point. Anybody can understand the logic there. So I don't know why she was so insistent on trying to dodge it.
It's because you lose support as a result of saying any increase in taxes will occur.
I think that's true, but I think Warren should just own it. Bernie's answer to that question was so much better. Bernie owned the fuck out of it, and then when it is talking points, when Elizabeth Warren talks like that, it makes her sound like just another politician.
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
it-
But, yeah,
it's
that's
such
why.
an eminently understandable point. It just seemed like it made her seem more sketchy than she had to look.
I
It
also
makes it
feel
seem
like
expensive.
there is a likelihood that she might change her revenue strategies and try to potentially even like act like she has a different kind of Medicare for all, or at least like a different funding vehicle for Medicare for all. And I think that's part of the reason why she won't like sign off on middle class taxes. I don't believe that there is any way that we could fund Medicare for all without a modest tax increase.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to find out if she can figure something out.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Fucking true. What's the next topic? I don't know why you would lay into this as the second topic of the podcast. You should have saved this for the end, dude. Jesus.
Well, all right. So
Hey,
So,
mind thanks again for the monitoring you've been doing. I mean, I know that was difficult.
it's never enough, dude. Don't praise me. All right? Everybody disagrees with you, so don't worry about it. All right, so Hillary Clinton was throwing out some fucking some memes towards some heavy accusations towards Tulsi.
Oh my God.
Did you guys hear about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, did she drop any like evidence beyond just that inference, or just her saying it? I mean,
I
well,
I
go
think
ahead.
it's
There's actually a
I
very
think it's highly
interesting Reddit
suspicious
post
that
about
Hillary
it.
Clinton came out with this information literally a day after Ronan Farrow went on national television and talked about, while he was doing his book tour for Catch and Release, talked about how the Clinton administration openly tried to stop him from pursuing Harvey Weinstein. And I think that was like an easy dodge. I think she was just trying to fucking get the scent off of that. And she did it effectively. No one talked about the fact that Hillary Clinton and her team were not happy with Ronan Farrow investigating Harvey Weinstein before all of that stuff was revealed.
yeah, and it probably didn't hurt that she had a book come out recently too that's got her in the news now. So
Yeah. So I mean, this is like she's pretty good at obviously like not colluding with the media, I guess, but just demanding media attention or changing the conversation. A lot of like old school politicians are good at that sort of stuff. So I don't know, but I don't really like Tulsi. I don't know. Are there Tulsels in here? We can debate on that. Maybe we can have a conversation about that.
what? Well, I mean, I guess I'm not really, but what do you not like about her? Just out of curiosity.
What do I not like about Tulsi?
Yeah. Because Bernie and I know Yang and them tweeted out support for her, so I'm
Yeah,
just
I don't care. I mean, Bernie sometimes says stuff that I don't agree with. Like I'm a big Bernie bro, but there are disagreements that I have with Bernie. So the thing I don't like about Tulsi Gabbard is honestly the fact that she claims to be anti-imperialist, but then will follow that up with, I'm for reasonable wars. Like I'm a war hawk when it comes to justifiable war versus unjustifiable regime change wars.
Sure.
And I think that designation left up to the American military-industrial complex is going to be really damaging. And for someone who claims to be anti-imperialist, she sure does like to hype up the fact that she is a part of the military, and that's a big part of her campaign. So I think that's a little weird. It just makes me very suspicious of her.
Well, I get what you're saying, but I mean, the idea of people who were in the military then speaking out against imperialism has a respectable tradition in this country. Like the man who wrote that book, that War is a Racket, and talked about a lot of America's terrible interventions in the the banana republics, as it were, in the 20s and 30s. Smedley Butler, he was a military guy, and I mean, being able to drop those credentials did help bring some respectability to his message that it might not have otherwise had. So I do think it helps. I feel like
it's IDPOL. It is identity politics. But also, I mean, Pat Tillman is a perfect example of a anti-imperialist military veteran. There are plenty of military veterans that I work with as well and talk to quite frequently. I agree. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard is genuine in her anti-interventionist stance, is what I was saying. I don't think she's an isolationist. I don't think that she is even an anti-interventionist. And that's precisely why I have a problem with her. I think it's hypocritical.
What makes you think that exactly?
What makes me think that
about Tulsi? Yeah, like why she's not like, why she's putting up, or why do you think that she's like putting out like a fake image of like anti-interventionism or whatever?
I think it works well with the leftists. Like she has a very interesting base of supporters, some from the right and some from the left. There are plenty of people who are anti-interventionists on the right as well. I'm sure Bastiat could further clarify. Like there are isolationist right-wingers now that rail against the neocons that sometimes for anti-Semitic reasons, other times for legitimate reasons, want to stop funding the state of Israel as it continues to do crimes against humanity in Palestine. So I think that she's just been able to maintain that like very interesting coalition of left-wing and right-wing voters.
Yeah, I am curious about her in part because I know, at least on my channel, a lot of folks will say, who see the red tie and conclude, oh, you must be a Trump supporter, will say stuff like, hey, the Democrat I'm pulling for is Tulsi, otherwise I'm voting Trump. And it is kind of an interesting phenomenon. I've noticed it a lot. I think I haven't noticed that with any other Democratic candidates either. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why people don't think that like Bernie Sanders, who has had a consistent anti-war message throughout his entire political career, is not getting the same kind of like anti-imperialist love that Tulsi Gabbard is getting. But
I think we know why.
Well, yeah.
Wait, why?
But I think making yourself a single issue voter like that, I mean, like a single issue candidate like that, also is harmful or might have damaging consequences during a campaign. And I think with Tulsi, like, her support for Modi is another example of this. Like what's happening in Kashmir is also pretty terrible. So her support for Hindu nationalism, Modi, is also damaging to her her opinion that she's anti-war.
Yeah.
My guess, and I could be wrong, is because it probably feels like Tulsi. I actually, because I haven't researched specifically, I don't know a lot of Bernie's anti-imperialist views. And I've listened to like a lot of Bernie media. I don't think he talks about it much. Whereas Tulsi seems to have made foreign policy like a literal, like it's the only, every time she opens her mouth, it's about how I'm a soldier and this is my foreign policy views. Right. So if you are like a voter that like that's like your big issue, and you don't follow a ton of like non-mainstream media, it's probably hard to know like what Bernie's foreign policy positions are versus Tulsi, who literally makes foreign policy like a focal point of what she talks about. That'd be my guess.
I think that's why they said like, well, we know why in regards to why like Bernie Sanders doesn't get that rep. But that's why I said throughout his entire career, like, I mean, he has been.
I'm not saying who is better or who's worse. I'm just saying that's probably why people know Tulsi more.
No, you're 100% right. And by the way, like he's been criticized for his support for groups that America has literally participated in the genocide of, like.
I think Bernie's been like pro-Palestine, like he's come out like anti-Israeli, right?
Yeah,
right. Yep.
Yeah. I think he was the only one. He was the only presidential candidate that went to, I forget what it was called, but it was like whatever. I don't remember the exact name, but it was a conference for Palestine.
Well, so since we're talking about this, what do we think? Because like it seems like Warren's kind of the front runner right now, as the polling's kind of showing. How do we feel about her views on like foreign intervention and shit like that? Like, are we?
I mean, I feel like it's kind of like what Destiny said about Bernie Sanders. I don't really know much about them. I mean, I think you're right. That's why Tulsi stands out. I don't really. Does anybody in here know much about it?
Honestly,
I mean,
well, Bernie has a pretty isolationist policy, just generally speaking. No, everything I've read has like pointed out to like Bernie just like not being interested in like meddling with other countries in general, or at least like the only thing that Trump and Bernie really had in common when it came to the last election cycle was just disliking the current trade deals that we had going on. So I guess like if you consider that like foreign meddling, then I guess they have similarities there. But when it comes to like usually war and stuff, Bernie has a very like strong record of being against like most wars in general.
Yeah, he has his the broadest way that I can summarize his opinion is building a global democratic movement to counter authoritarianism. So he wants to do the exact opposite of what we've been doing in the way that we deal with foreign nations, and instead build valuable partnerships with these nations and help them out rather than destroy them.
I would say after the last debate, the surprising answers that I heard was actually between Tulsi and Pete, where Pete actually gave a refreshingly nuanced view of American foreign policy. That a lot of the times, out of the insanely anti-interventionalism is nice in theory, but like if Russia or other countries are going to be supporting agents on the other side, it becomes a lot harder when you look at situations like Iraq to just say, okay, well, we need to pull out everything and leave. And Pete actually nailed that. I don't know how much like nuanced foreign policy views are actually cared about by Americans, but Pete actually nailed that really well when he talked about how it was pretty fucked that we just kind of like piece the fuck out of certain areas and just like basically abandon people, whether it's the Iraqi government, whether it's the Peshmerga in Iraq, whether it's the Kurds in Turkey or northern Syria. Like we can't just have a strictly like, oh, we're not going to intervene anywhere policy. It needs to be a little bit more nuanced than that, I think. And Pete did a good job of saying that.
Yeah, and we're seeing that right now with what's going on in Syria.
Yeah,
it's easy to say like end the forever wars. I mean, I know I've said that before, but then I mean, Trump does it, and of course his reasons why seem crooked and hard to understand at best. But I mean, this is, I guess, an example of what happens with an instant withdrawal. People.
Well, Trump's reasons. Trump hasn't contributed at all to a positive environment in Syria. All he did was he bombed an airport because he thought he would get good coverage on the media from it. Trump has been foreign policy blunder after foreign policy blunder. If you want to talk about a nuanced approach to foreign policy, you don't begin that conversation by legitimizing a North Korean dictator and by withdrawing from one of the most successfully negotiated nuclear treaties of all time, which was the agreement that we had with Iran to prevent them from acquiring nuclear weapons. So Trump doesn't get any credit for foreign policy in the Middle East. It's been incredibly destructive.
And what really is the worst part of it all is that he always wants to do it all alone. He doesn't even want to get any kind of coalition going for the kind of disastrous ideas he has. Like rather than go after Chinese trade, like as part of a multinational coalition, a trans-Pacific partnership, as you might think about it, he just goes it alone after alienating every other country in the world. So.
This is just like a random comment when it comes to like foreign policy and stuff like that. Although I'm not like a very like pro-interventionist person. I mean, like, Puerto Rican, hello, like I've seen like basically the effects of like colonialism firsthand. I do think that at least like in today's like modern day and time, it's fucked up that we do go to these places, we fuck shit up, and then we leave without really fixing anything. And that's how you end up having power vacuums, and that's how you end up having things like ISIS form, right? Because we basically like leave these places in like complete like distraught and chaos. So though like ideally, like as I said before, like it's easy to think like we should just pull out and stuff. I think realistically doing that can lead to like a lot of like shitty problems if we're not careful about it,
Mm-hmm.
My 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Well, so fuck, I don't know.
Yeah, Pixie, can I ask you a Puerto Rico question?
Go for it. I love Puerto Rico questions.
All right. Statehood or independence?
Holy fuck. Okay. I don't want to like bore you guys with like 30 minutes of conversation. So I'll try to put this in a couple of sentences.
Okay.
So, ideally, I would like statehood, right? It's like a nice dream. I don't think it's ever going to happen. And even if it does happen, I don't think we're going to have enough political power to take away like the federal laws that are really fucking us over. So that only really leaves independence as an option, which we're probably not going to get either way. And even if we do get, our economy is going to be fucked a lot for like the short term. So, you know, for me personally, yeah, I would say independence, but that is not the common Puerto Rican sentiment.
Gotcha. What is the common one? I don't know. I'm personally.
Okay, so there's like this is like the complicated thing about Puerto Rico. Like a lot of people do not feel as if they're Americans first. They feel like they're Puerto Ricans first, right? But a lot of them have been like really brainwashed, like hardcore since they were young to think like if you ever become independent, you're gonna be like Cuba or Venezuela. So you can never do that, like ever. So a lot of them are like terrified of it, and that's why they want to like go to statehood because they're just terrified of independence. But it's basically like 50-50, right? Like here 50% want to be like a state, and the other 50% like want to stay how we are now, even though they agree how we are now is not sustainable, but they're like afraid of losing their culture. So yeah, that's the key.
I appreciate it.
Nice. I actually don't know anything about Puerto Rico. It'd be nice to have a conversation with you, like in depth, about like the issues and politics of that. It'd be actually like a really interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Literally, if any of you guys ever want to talk about it, I will like gush about it because I'm very passionate about it.
It's super interesting because you're right. Like there are colonial kind of dynamics there, but it's a little more complex than just like straight oppression too.
So I think we talked about this a little bit on the last podcast, but recently Bernie had his rally, and he had AOC show up and kind of like endorse him. Do we feel like this really does anything for his campaign? Like I don't know. How do we feel about this endorsement? Is it gonna help him win the polls or no?
I think the biggest problem impacting Bernie Sanders right now is the fact that he's not getting enough media coverage. There have been studies conducted on the amount of media coverage that Bernie Sanders has gotten in comparison to other candidates. I can't pull them up right now. I don't know. I don't remember the exact numbers, but there is still that disparity. Maybe not to the same extent that there was one in 2016. But this is a really good move because AOC is someone that liberals genuinely enjoy seeing on television. And if she starts delivering stump speeches alongside Bernie, then I think that's going to yield at least positive coverage from the mainstream outlets, which we know will end up swaying public opinion.
Nice. Does anybody disagree? Like, do you think this is like
I
substantial
don't think it's
for
going to
Bernie?
make a significant difference at this point.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to matter like in the grand scheme. Like, I don't think it's going to make any kind of sensible difference, but maybe it'll bump them up a little bit.
It's still really early. Like we're still months away from Iowa, so maybe something changes. But I don't know. It seems like this would have been a good momentum push early on. Like Warren has all the momentum right now, but that might change come February.
Yeah, I think Warren is a really solid Iowa team. She has the same exact team that Barack Obama did, and that was really impactful for the Obama campaign, as some will recall. So. People in my chat are saying Iowa polls don't matter at all. That's fucking absolutely incorrect. The Iowa polls are incredibly important. The Nevada polls are incredibly important as well, which Bernie is leading in, and has a solid, reliable lead in. Shocker, big union state. But I think, I think like depending on the groundwork that Bernie's campaign is going to do in Iowa and potentially New Hampshire, we shall see what happens. But that's in order for him to turn this around, he definitely needs to get positive media coverage or media coverage that centers around his policies even, and not just like his heart attack or not media coverage that says Elizabeth Warren is really good in this debate or Joe Biden is really good in this debate, and then just like glance over Bernie Sanders' performance when he does have some good one-liners. So we shall see. But I'm not saying like Bernie's definitely for sure going to win. I'm not saying that at all. I've never maintained that position.
Hasan, can I ask you a question about Bernie?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Gabassia.
Yeah. So one of the things I've been reading, and I'm curious, as a self-described Bernie bro, what you think about this? I've heard people say that he needs to go after Elizabeth Warren more actively. Like, how do you feel about that? Do you think that's true, or why so?
Well, because Elizabeth Warren is doing a really good job captivating some of the more moderate progressives, but she's doing an even better job, in my opinion, getting favorable media coverage and winning over the professional managerial class. If you look at like the independent donor details that were released recently, like there are a lot of people who are she's now securing small donors as well. Not to the extent that Bernie Sanders is, but like Elizabeth Warren has been able to captivate the liberal audiences, and I think that's incredibly valuable. And Bernie Sanders attacking her is only going to is only going to destroy that coalition that they've had right now. And I think it's better for him to maintain solidarity, at least for the time being.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel
Makes
like as
sense.
things stand now.
Plus, he's a huge pussy. So, not to use misogynistic terms. Well, I am using misogynistic terms, but yeah, I'm edgy sometimes. Sorry.
I mean, his style has got him this far. So I mean, I understand.
I mean, everything that's on the stage right now, it's something that kind of like originated from Bernie a couple years ago that he brought to the forefront. And right now, like as things stand, like I also agree that Bernie like being more aggressive towards Elizabeth Warren doesn't make much sense, especially like taking into consideration that I feel like there's like a common consensus that like, okay, if you're for Elizabeth Warren first, but Bernie gets a nomination, you'll vote for him. But like, you know, if Bernie gets, if it's the other way around, same thing, you'll vote for Elizabeth Warren. So trying to like attack that and create a rift, I feel like is not the smartest move for either of them.
It felt like Bernie supporters were originally saying that, but it felt like they didn't mean it. It felt like now that Warren has like passed Bernie in the polls or is on the verge of doing so, now like all of the crazy conservative attacks are coming out. Like if you've watched Kalinsky's Twitter about like Warren, holy shit! Like you've seen like a bunch of like really dumb shit. Like I've seen people attack her over like the Pocahontas stuff, like literally using those words. Like it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it fair?
What independent commentators do is entirely separate from what the campaign does, though. And like as I have also admitted and have demonstrated, like different political commentators who support Bernie Sanders have different opinions on the matter.
Well, I was gonna say, isn't it fair to talk about the people that are like leading in the polls, like since they're like more and more relevant? Like I don't know, like there is an uptick about people like trying to like criticize Warren, but isn't that just kind of like because she's like.
Criticizing Warren is fine, but when you're starting to jump onto like the really cheap attacks, it feels a little dirty to me. But,
well, I mean, what would you consider like cheap attacks then?
Like calling her Pocahontas, I think is a cheap attack. Yeah.
Wait,
especially when most Democrats don't even care about or understand anything about like the Native American issues anyway. Yeah, it feels pretty tasteless.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. I don't think I like Elizabeth Warren, so I don't want her to, and I'm biased. I don't want her to damage her reputation. And I don't want people to damage her reputation because ultimately, like, if the Bernie thing doesn't work out, like Elizabeth Warren, I think is light years ahead of any of the other candidates with her consistent track record and advocacy for consumer protection. So, again, I don't appreciate people like saying Pocahontas or whatever, especially because it's still somewhat racially charged or definitely racially charged. But as far as like criticizing her background for being like or for presenting herself as Native American, that's definitely going to be an issue that comes up regardless, no matter what.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that. I have one more question for you guys. I'm curious about when we're talking about Democratic primaries. So I know that I have my candidate. I like Andrew Yang. I want him to win, but I feel like I'm going to vote for whoever the Democratic nominee is because I mean they're all infinitely better than who we've got now, right? But one thing I've seen that I'm curious what y'all think about is how do you feel about the idea that conflict in the Democratic primary is setting Democrats back in the general election? Do you feel like that's fair to say?
I mean, if we had unity behind one person, it would definitely work out better. Yeah, but like, is the conflict justified for some of the political candidates? For sure. Like, definitely, like for Biden and Warren or Bernie, I don't care about the conflict. I definitely think there needs to be done. Yeah.
Oh God, Biden is if Biden gets the nomination, I strongly believe Trump is going to win. I don't think there's going to be any way about that.
Even if Warren gets it, Trump could still win. Anything could happen.
Yeah, anything could happen. But
the most vitriolic stuff that I remember in my lifetime in terms of like infighting during primaries, like people think that it's bad now, and maybe I just misremember, but man, Obama versus Clinton, that shit was fucking brutal. Yeah, and Obama still like landslid like that election, and he's black, so like he had a lot to overcome there, and he still did it.
She brought out the birth certificate, I think, didn't she?
Yeah, I don't know if she did exactly, but it wouldn't surprise me if people in the Clinton camp were pointing towards it, or Clinton supporters were like, that was a crazy vitriolic campaign.
They did bring out a photo of him wearing like traditional garb.
Oh, whatever.
I remember that.
They did do that.
Yeah. So I mean, after that, like people seem to chill. Like fucking Clinton was his Secretary of State. I mean, like they got back together afterwards. So I think that like Trump is such a strong. If the Republican Party were united, I think this would be legitimate. But like Trump has caused quite the schism. We haven't seen those undercurrents as much, although it's starting to resurface a little bit with this Ukraine stuff. Trump has caused quite the schism in the Republican Party. So I don't think the Democrats have anything to be worried about being really toxic in the primaries.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I feel that way too. I was just curious because I've been, been reading a lot about that.
I don't mind polarization in the primaries. Oh, sorry, Pixie, go ahead.
Do you guys wait? I'm honestly curious. Do you guys not feel like Biden's Hillary 2.0? Because like at least
Biden's worse than Hillary.
Yeah, exactly.
Really? Yeah.
I don't.
I
don't
like
know. I think Hillary is really bad to me.
Yeah, like her hater. Hillary was at least sharp. Like I feel like you could have like a foreign policy debate with Hillary Clinton, and the amount of times a record player would be brought up would be zero. Like I think Hillary Clinton is like a pretty sharp person. Fuck, man, Biden has like managed to stave off like the huge like dives in the polls, but god damn, sometimes like mentally he seems like he's on his last fucking leg. I don't know.
Destiny, I heard you say something like to the tune of the like Bernie blackout or whatever is almost as bad as like saying that there's like a Jewish conspiracy. Don't you feel like the media is, and this is not like a gotcha or anything, I genuinely want to hear your point of view on this because we haven't talked in a while. Don't you feel like Biden does get like an insane amount of support from the media, or did, especially in the aftermath of debates when people are paying attention to it?
I feel like it's easier to explain all of this by saying the media wants to make a lot of money, so they're going to show the most popular candidate, and since Biden is the most popular candidate, they're going to give him a fuck ton of airtime. The idea that like Bernie is being like, maybe there's some bias on the part of like individual reporters. I don't know where you heard me talking about this. If you were listening to me talk about Trihex, Trihex specifically said that he thought that Bezos was pressuring the Washington Post not to publish articles like that. That's an insane level of conspiracy when we start to think that like the CEOs of media companies are pressuring.
Wait, why is that extreme?
Manufacturing consent rather than like forcible.
I would say that's extreme because like that's just not how media works. Like media is like one of the most like leaky industries, and the amount of journalists that would be frothing at the mouth to write a hit piece on WAPO for engaging in that type of like journalistic disintegrity or unintegrity would be insane. Like there's no way that stuff like that is happening. There like I totally admit there could be like biases on like the individual reporters, sure, but I don't think there's some like top-down pressure to not report on.
Well,
Bernie.
I was going to say, don't you
industry can handle that.
Don't you think the people that make the hiring decisions? Well, I was going to say, don't you think the people that make the hiring decisions in these corporations like account for that? They like hire people that have these biases that support their capital interest, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, capital interest insofar as like they support like reporting on the popular candidates. Like it's undeniable that Biden isn't the most popular because of some big media conspiracy. He's popular because he was Obama's vice president, and because Obama is still really popular in the Democratic Party. Maybe not on Twitter, but like especially like in the South where a lot of Black people live, and especially among poorer communities that don't have access to like online Twitter. That's where like Biden was pulling a lot of his major early support. And the media will show people what they want to see, which is the more likely reason why he's got so much airtime compared to like Bernie, in my opinion.
But like, don't you think like there's a possibility that, or you like, okay, all I can think about is like in the last elections when it was Hillary Clinton versus like Bernie Sanders, when the polls came after the debates, a lot of them were saying that like, oh, Bernie Sanders did better in the debating than Hillary Clinton. And then a bunch of them got wiped off and were replaced with like internal analysis polls or whatever, like from CNN or whatever, where like the public couldn't really vote on it. Really sketchy shit, right?
So I don't want to like, and I'm not going to accuse you of anything because I don't know, but like the thing that I would caution here is that like for me to believe that, I would need to very carefully sift through stories to see if this actually happened. And I understand this is going to be an upsetting analogy, but like this is the exact same type of questions that are usually posed by Jewish conspiracy theory people. That there's like a massive top-down conspiracy that's rewriting news stories, that's pressuring from the top, like some shadowy corporate agency that's like making all like you have to, just because of how dude, I fucking had lunch with a Huffington Post writer the other day. Wait, like there's like a very fundamental level of misunderstanding that you have to think that there could be top-down pressure from either the DNC or from CEOs on journalistic outlets and actually like influence every single writer. Like these are some of the most powerful unions in the country. I don't think that kind of stuff.
Wait, what's the most powerful unions in the country?
Some of the journalistic unions.
Okay, one that's not correct, but hold on. It's not about like what Mindwaves was saying. It's not about that at all. It's more so about the hiring practices. It doesn't start from the top down with like people literally saying, "Oh, if you write about Bernie, I'm gonna fucking shit can you." That can happen, but those would usually be like total one-off instances, and they get a little bit of coverage here and there, and then people forget about it. What does actually end up happening is people know to play by the rules. Cenk has, I mean, this is an anecdote, but Cenk has personal experience with this. There is definitely it's not even a conspiracy, and Noam Chomsky has written extensively on this as well in a book, in his famous work, Manufacturing Consent. Networkers hire reporters that they know are going to play ball with their capital interests. And that's how it goes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think that capital interest means reporting on who's popular, not that, like, for instance, if Bernie were to become more popular,
it could take other forms. Don't you agree that it could take other forms than just reporting on like whoever's popular?
Maybe the people I've talked to have just been too biased, but I'd be super interested in hearing other conversations from journalists, not like people that work at The Intercept, but people that like work like in industry, like New York Times or WAPA writers, or maybe you would say
people
those
that work in
people are already like
are people that work in the industry, though. I mean, they started off in The Guardian and stuff, like Glenn Greenwald, who I disagree with all the time on certain issues.
I just
like literally all like fucking mainstream media reporters, every single one of them. But hold on, the thing I wanted to ask you is, so then why do you think that there was an overwhelming amount of positive coverage on Elizabeth Warren for such a long time, and then and it centered around how she had a policy for things, and then as soon as she picked up in the polls as a consequence of that, then the coverage is still pretty positive, to the tune, like I would even consider it to be like puff pieces. The coverage is now still pretty positive, but like whenever Bernie Sanders comes out with progressive policies, I've literally heard commentators on television say, "Oh, he's coming out with another program. Oh, who's he attacking next?"
For the exact same reason you just said that, like, online people might be commenting more on Warren than they did before, because Warren is becoming more popular. She's starting to draw support from a whole bunch of different coalitions, and now they're reporting on it more.
But this started the Frederick Douglass stuff. Like all of this started.
Wait, what do you mean it started before?
Elizabeth Warren. So Elizabeth Warren was beloved almost universally by the media class.
Well, wait. Elizabeth Warren was loved by the media class because the only issue, and now I might be politically ignorant here, but from what I remember, pretty much the only thing Elizabeth Warren was known for was like massive, it was education reform that she wanted to do student loan forgiveness, and the Consumer Protection Bureau, whatever, that she wrote. Those are, and I could be wrong, but those are the only two things that I remember ever being reported on. Nobody disagreed with those.
They covered her, like the famous, she has a plan for that. That was covered pretty extensively.
Wait, I'm talking prior to the election season. These were like the two big things.
Yeah, the only other thing I can think of prior to the election was the "nevertheless she persisted" bit with Mitch McConnell. I don't know if you guys remember that, but
no, I'm talking the election season when she was sometimes in like fourth place or third place, and the matchups would literally avoid Bernie Sanders, and it would say what's going to happen in the next debate between Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden. And then as soon as she got to second place, and even in the first place in some polls, they now had a valid reason not to cover Bernie Sanders. But before that, they didn't. And yet they still didn't really engage in much Bernie coverage, and instead constantly praise Elizabeth Warren for...
So, like, I don't even know if I agree with that. Like, and this is something like I wish I need to spend more time like digging into the data, because like I really try to stay away from this like super conspiratorial stuff. But like Bernie has had a ton of engagement with media. Like the idea that like there's like a Bernie media blackout, I could do more research into this. I threw a link in chat for like an Axios thing that I guess like analyzes like headlines for media, but like the idea that Bernie is like hidden from the media, I don't think that's true. Maybe we can go deeper and say, well, does Bernie get bad coverage versus good coverage? Although, I mean, I would argue like any coverage is probably good in this media environment, as we saw with Trump. I don't know. I feel like people are paying more attention to Elizabeth Warren now. They're more critical, because when Warren came in, Warren was a bottom tier shitter stuck in with all the other candidates, and she couldn't break out. She was at like 6%, I think, when she came in, and then she very slowly has been peeling away and has now come to like almost front runner status. And now people are talking about her more. I don't think there's anything super unnatural about that for for-profit driven media companies that are just trying to show people who they support already.
So there's just
I mean, again, like I said, it avoids the... I guess you need to look into it a little bit more, and I'll try to find some evidence for you as well. But that doesn't cover why there was so much positive media coverage on Warren for such a long time when she wasn't the most popular candidate.
Well, don't a lot of the times, a lot of people like new faces when it comes to politics as well. New faces, especially those that are platforming, because Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, remember when Pete got jerked off? Like, he could speak 20 languages. Like, people jerked off Pete a lot when he was initially there as well. But I don't think it was because there was some like, I don't think it was a big conspiracy about anti-whatever interest. I think it's just a new face, and people just want to show people new things.
Yeah.
Like,
you were saying irrelevant?
Yeah, so it's a new face platforming off of a winning strategy for the most part, right? Recognition that Bernie Sanders' strategy more or less was a winner, and that it was a new face propping up that same ideology. Why not give that face time? That seems to hit numbers pretty well.
So I just wanted to make like a quick comment about like the thing that you linked. I only was able to like skim it right now very quickly. But yeah, Bernie Sanders has a lot of social media interaction because like a lot of his followers and supporters are grassroots, right? And part of that is like tweeting extensively and like sending as many Facebook requests as you can and like Instagram everywhere. So it wouldn't be like surprising to say that he does have a lot of social like media
never mind. Hold
interaction
on.
in
Yeah,
that
no. Wait, I want to walk this back completely. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize this was just social media engagement. No, you're right. This has nothing to do with mainstream media. I shouldn't have been like this. That was my bad. I should have checked this first. You're right.
Yeah, and then I guess like the other point, like I also am like trying not to be like too like crazy conspiracy theorist person, but also just like I just can't help looking at like sites like Fox News, right, which are like super obvious and biased and like have like no regard for the truth, and we'll just put like whatever candidate like brings them like the most views ideologically or whatever, which aligns with their like profit and interest. And like we know like these major corporations or like these major news outlets, they're not independent, right? They're owned like by bigger companies that would probably be like fucking terrified if like a Bernie Sanders like actually won. So yeah, like I do agree with you that I would have to do like more exact research about it and like make sure I have like the exact numbers. But what I guess what I'm trying to say is that like to me it's just like not this super far-fetched like conspiracy theory idea, especially when we see it like already happening with other like news sources. Yeah, that they will put like a candidate forward and like freaking preach it if it benefits their corporate interests.
What do you think about this, Bestia?
Yeah, I guess I've worked on political campaigns before, and recently, and I think that I have seen that large corporations, especially corporations with some kind of monopoly market power, do have the ability to twist a certain amount of news coverage in some ways. I'm skeptical that they're able to do so with respect to traditional mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream media outlets like the Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, with respect to, and so on and so forth. With respect to a political like a presidential campaign, I just think that the scale is just so different.
Too many people involved.
Yeah. So, but I do think that on the smaller scale, like for example, a lot of towns in the United States, and this is one of the problems with the rise of the internet. A lot of cities in the United States now have one hometown newspaper or like none, and that one hometown newspaper depends on advertising revenue, and so in a way they're very, very subject to to corporate influences. So I think that kind of thing is possible. I'm just skeptical that it and.
Oh shit! Is it
Hello?
I think Discord's acting up.
Is that me?
Uh-oh.
Gotta go pee real quick.
Holy shit! Okay.
All right. Shit. Sorry, what's up? Are we back? My bad.
Yeah, we're back. Holy shit! Yeah. Right. I think Discord just glitched or whatever the fuck. But yeah.
Yeah, Pixie, that link you just posted about Sinclair's script for stations, that is such a good one with respect to
for local media shit.
Yeah.
Fucking terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, and that is I think an example of a little bit of what I was talking about. Too, and it's for folks who haven't seen that before. I think it's worth pasting in the chat because it's definitely worth a watch.
All right. I actually kind of want to since we're talking about journalism, I think we're like the only other topic that's kind of like relevant to that we could segue to is the Mark Zuckerberg one. With all of these sort of like meetings that he's had and like all the testimony he's done in front of Congress and all that shit. So apparently there's been some stories coming out that he's been having some secretive meetings, I guess in his own home in some instances with people like Lindsey Graham and Tucker Carlson and the like. And there's been this huge controversy about like how Facebook's being managed, how like Facebook is allowing people to just like run blatantly false political ads on their shit. And there's been some concern about like, well, should we be like regulating social media like Facebook and like how they allow political ads on their platforms? Are we concerned that there's like possibly any bias here with Mark Zuckerberg and like whether or not he allows these sort of like false ads as they're being called on Facebook?
I think he's just trying to avoid getting regulated, and it seems like he's figured out the easiest way to do it is probably convince a few powerful Republicans that he's fair and balanced, and therefore he can stave off the threat of maybe an investigation from the FCC or the so on and so forth. So it seems like he's trying to cover his bases.
I'm kind of curious, and I don't know the answer to this, but is this really abnormal behavior? So as an example to this, a lot of people talk about how, following for 1 second, FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, people say well, these kinds of requests, they're just a rubber stamp because 99% of them get approved. But the reason why most of them get approved is because the legislators and the police work really close with each other or federal authorities to make sure that hey, this is going to be in the up and up before we even put it in. So my question is is this normal behavior that really wealthy media people probably regularly have meetings with people in Congress so that everything isn't legislated publicly beforehand, or is this actually super abnormal? Because it doesn't surprise me at all that the owner of a platform that large would also be talking to people in Congress and shit who are regularly investigating or talking about the effects that these things are having publicly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's nothing new in the sense of private companies going to basically the government and trying to low-key lobby in different ways to pass legislation in their favor. I just feel this has become a bigger story because we know how Facebook has influenced the election. We know Russian interference, and we know how I guess how dangerous the social media platform is and how much of a threat it can actually be to democracy. So even though it's technically nothing new in the sense of oh yeah, it's a company going over and trying to influence Congress, it is something new in the sense that oh my god, this company is theoretically a threat to democracy if things got bad enough,
I agree. I wonder if this would even be a story if it wasn't about all the Cambridge Analytica stuff. If that story and everything hadn't gotten big, maybe we wouldn't even care about this. I'm not sure.
Also, quick side comment or whatever, Yang had a 3-head IQ take when it came to that stuff. Do you guys know what he tweeted? Do you remember? He was he sent a tweet in response to that being all I think it's good that any social media or CEO talks to different people with different points of views or whatever, and it was referring to the whole Facebook scandal, and it was come on, Mark Zuckerberg is not meeting with I don't know, Burr or other high-profile Republicans to learn about different types of views, right? He's doing it to save his own ass.
Well, hey, whatever his reason for doing it. I mean, ultimately, I think that probably Republicans took it that way, as though he's trying to understand their point of view and make them feel heard. And ultimately, that may not mean much objectively, but to him, it means a lot because that makes them that much less likely to regulate. So.
Well, do you think
you just got to make these handful of powerful Republicans feel better, and they'll hold back?
True. How do we feel about the political ramifications of allowing Facebook to host these political ads, which can contain blatant misinformation? Though, should this be regulated or not?
I don't know that you could. I mean, with the First Amendment,
for advertisements, I imagine you probably could.
It's false advertising.
Yeah, right? I mean, it would depend though. If it's in any way subjectively false, I just don't know.
Sure, yeah, subjectively false, yeah, but I don't know what misinformation is being referred to. I don't use fucking Facebook because I'm not, 50 years old. But
well, if it were something that might be slanderous or libelous or some kind of violent incitement, but I think for the most part, Facebook is probably screening most at least the violent stuff out, and the falsehoods there would be falsehoods that I think would just be climate change denial, which bad, but I don't know that you could ever regulate it out of existence.
Well, Destiny or Hasan, what do you guys think about regulating these sorts of political ads on social media that have blatant misinformation, blatant lies?
Hasn't Facebook already started trying to do misinformation or
I think it was just on Instagram.
No, they've stated publicly that they're basically okay with campaign advertisements that are misinformed. That's why Elizabeth Warren launched a whole anti-campaign to that and has started putting false advertisements about like Mark Zuckerberg and shit like that.
Well, like the scary part about regulating that is if you get like some sort of chilling effect that essentially bans all political advertisements. So like when you start talking about like misinformation, we're going to have to like, in order to talk about that, we're going to have to reconcile the different worlds that Republicans and Democrats inhabit right now. So like, for instance, like a climate change political ad is going to be challenged by conservatives that are going to say, oh, well, climate change isn't real.
Right.
You know, or like an ad showing like the downsides of like single payer healthcare might be challenged by the Democrats, saying like, oh, well, these claims are hysterical, these aren't real. That would be really hard to regulate. I'm not sure.
What do you think are relevant? Or go ahead, Pixie. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I guess you could like draw the line when it becomes like slanderous to like a political candidate, right? Like Elizabeth Warren is for late-term abortions. Which,
even on that, you actually you can actually. It's almost impossible to get somebody on slander or defamation of public figures.
Yeah.
They
political
have
political ads. You can literally lie. It's fair game.
You can say that, and because there's a standard called the actual malice standard. In order for them to prosecute you for slander or defamation, not only do they have to prove that what you wrote was false, they have to prove that you knew it was false when you wrote it. It's very, very, very hard to successfully sue for defamation or slander for public figures. Almost impossible, intentionally so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine, like, I don't like misinformation, but it seems pretty fucking impossible to probably regulate it away very practically without, like, top to bottom, massive amounts of information reform in our country. So,
to be fair, for me, I wouldn't mind that. I think that'd be interesting to see some kind of like fucking call it the Ministry of Truth, even just for fucking memes. To see some kind of like huge reform, because I do genuinely believe that the path that we're on right now, with the way that we handle media, is self-destructive. That our democracy right now is dysfunctional at like the most fundamental level, because we can't evaluate like what's real and what's false. And part of what contributes to that are corporations that have a lot of technology and a lot of financial incentive to lie to people.
Well, I mean, I think that's true. I don't think the government could do much about it, but I know Facebook is like trying to set up a Supreme Court internally where they're going to do a lot of what they're going to try and do a lot of what we've been discussing. Like,
but Facebook has no financial incentive to actually show us truth. Facebook just has enough financial incentive to keep the government off their back. That's all they're incentivized to do.
I think that counts for a lot, though. I mean, I think you're right, but that counts for a lot with the way that people on both sides are taking high level.
Look at where we're at right now, though. I don't think it's helped. We haven't gotten.
Time.
I mean,
we don't have time though. That's the problem.
Well, I mean, I may be there with you, but
yeah,
I mean,
like,
one of the
in the sense that we could just like lower. Sorry for interrupting. We can just like lower the bar for when it comes to, I guess, like not public corporations, right? Like Facebook, or for example, like allowing ads on there instead of like having to prove like, oh, you knew it was like malicious or whatever. We can just like lower the bar to like, blatantly false, right? Things that we like can kind of like use like almost common sense to know. What do you guys feel about that?
Well, everyone's going to argue. There is no such thing as common sense, right? Not when you're talking to political shit. Like, people are going to fight to the death over every single thing you try to bring an issue with.
I was going to pass that off to Bastia because he's the lawyer here. What do you think about the lawyer?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, to get to that point earlier, I mean, I know that she is, I guess at the moment we're thinking consensus here, at least, she's the likeliest Democrat to win. And she is talking about breaking Facebook apart. So, I mean, the political process is slow, but I mean, I think they really are feeling the heat. And so,
yeah.
Let's see. What else were we? Oh, because like, fuck, where was I in my notes?
Hasan, are you okay? What's going on?
No, he's trying to milk Twitch Primes over on his channel, I think.
Mad respect.
Yeah, because there was some I guess after the media was like calling out some like false ads that were appearing on Facebook, Warren also made like an ad that apparently contained like some false information. People were saying it was like somewhat of a clapback. I posted a link with the article about it in the topics list, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I didn't see it actually.
Yeah, which one were you referencing?
I think that's the CNET link.
Okay. Oh, Elizabeth Warren runs a false Facebook ad.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue that's a political statement itself, right?
Yeah. I mean, if everybody else is doing it and it seems to be working, right? Like, maybe you could do it just to increase exposure, what have you.
she's like trying to do it to make a point, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just do a double whammy there, prove a point, and also to get your name out there. So if anything, that's actually just good marketing.
Sure.
Can I ask like a question that's a little bit like not related to this, but related to this at the same time?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to like the topic of censorship, do you guys believe that the government should like basically censor or get rid of like echo chambers, like of like, let's say, I don't know, neo-Nazis or shit like that? Are you guys in favor for that, against that? Like, what do you think?
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and jump in and throw my 2 cents in. I usually try to like stay somewhat objective on this, but like this topic specifically, I don't know. I'm even uncomfortable with like the government being able to like label who is or is not like a terrorist organization, because oftentimes that's used for like political purposes to like snuff out any sort of like I don't know, like movement.
like black identity extremists versus white supremacist terror, right?
Right. So like I don't know how you would really like tackle that. You have to ask the question like, well, how do we identify these groups, and like do we really trust the government to like identify these groups accurately?
Yeah. Nah, yeah, I think it's dangerous.
Fuck that shit. I go full on the other direction. So I don't care about like hate speech and all that shit. I don't think people should do it, but I don't think it should be illegal. What should be illegal is engaging in gross misinformation. Whether you are doing disinformation campaigns intentionally or you're engaging with the subject matter in such an irresponsible manner that you contribute to the spread of misinformation. I think that one of the biggest threats to the foundation of our democracy is people's inability to like exist in the real world. And I think that online disinformation contributes to that greatly. So people like Alex Jones, people like Sargon of Akkad, people like every single motherfucker at Fox News, like these types of people that whose whole purpose is to just sell bullshit and to lie and to misrepresent things. Everybody that spreads shit about Pizzagate, Uranium One, like this type of shit, fuck all that shit.
How do you combat that though?
Put a fucking literal ministry of truth together and say, hey, you're banned from this shit or else we're going to shut down your company. It's like, it's really aggressive. I know that it's really bad, but like, I literally think that like we are on the precipice of like different realities, physical realities emerging from where we live today in the United States, because so many people are so fucking out there in terms of what they think is real or not. Like I have talked to so many people who live in entirely different, like these are people like imagine like, imagine like the conservatives' mythical Mexican immigrant. This is a guy that comes to the United States, steals 3 white jobs, manages to like also steal welfare simultaneously, all while not having a social security number, and then like he moonlights as an MS-13 rapist. Like there's no possible way to have like reasonable conversations with these people, and the people that contribute to like disinformation are destroying our ability to have a conversation. It's absolutely fucking insane.
Well, I mean, I just want to say 2 points about that. One, I do feel like what we're going through is definitely unique in American history, but I do think it's a phase that's going to pass as people, get a better handle on the internet and
wait, why do you think
mesh it in with our society? I think that the internet seems to be driving a lot of this stuff, and I think it's a generational shift in understanding it. I mean, I feel like a lot of this stuff, a lot of the conspiracies that you're talking about are especially circulated by, boomer types who are. This is a real new communication medium for them.
Way.
Not
when you look at like the Charlottesville rally, those are young people.
No, you're right, but I think that's a relative minority, and I feel like the big
dangerous
point
minority.
I agree, it is dangerous. But imagine if you have this Ministry of Truth in the federal government, then you've got Donald Trump in charge of it. I mean, it feels like a real danger. I mean, any legal considerations aside, because of course unconstitutional. But that aside, just imagining President Trump with an organization like that, it's spooky.
This is my 2 cents on it, right? Everybody like freaks out about like, oh, but the government drawing the line, but I feel like that line is pretty much like drawn by itself. People advocating for mass violence, period.
Sure, but that's you're absolutely right. But I think, advocacy of violence is already incitement to violence is already a crime.
Exactly. So why if we know that like these echo chambers do actually like lead to greater violence and do lead to like mass shootings and do actually incite violence, even though it's just online, it should be prosecuted as such. So the question is like, why aren't we doing that? It
just feels so subjective to me. I mean, look at the discussion that I was having earlier with Hasan.
I was almost moved to violence in a video game.
Where like we were having a real disagreement about like communism, for example, and the issues of that aside. I mean, is the Ministry of Truth going to make a call on that? And I mean, if it is, it's making a serious, it's seriously involving itself in American politics in ways that I feel like just can't help but be destructive. Maybe helpful at first, but long term, government agencies have a very long lifetime, and I feel like the arc of that kind of agency would be toward injustice.
I mean, there's a very big difference between arguing for like for and against an economic system and like, you know, somebody saying, I want to kill all Jews and black people. Like, you see, like there is a line.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's easy to draw that line for now, but I think that that's a line that will not be easy to draw in practice. You know,
I do want to say, because Destiny brought up like the whole Ministry of Truth thing. Like the thing is like, I'm so like, I don't know, how would we even form this? Would it be democratic? And how do we make sure that like the government doesn't use this to like snuff out like any opposition, right? Or,
I mean,
like,
you'd have to have it like
political
agreed
purposes.
upon. It would be like you'd nominate like judges from both sides, and then the judges would come together to nominate. Maybe you have like both sides nominate 3 judges, and then those 6 judges nominate like 3 more, and then you make a decision. I don't know how you do it, but even if it was like less good than what we had now, I would be okay with like trying to move in that direction, because I think that what we have right now will lead to the destruction of like the first world. Like, I think that our inability to process what is actually happening is so fucking bad that like shit is fucked.
Do you think that there's any way we could combat this with like education? Like at
No.
all? Like, no?
You're fighting against capital interest, right? The problem is that large corporations that control a lot of fucking money have unprecedented power and tools to show you information that makes them money. That like the profit incentive is there. There's no possible way you're going to fight against that with education. That has to be like a government intervention approach. It's the clearest example of a market failure I can ever see. Like, the externality of people not understanding what is real or fake is absolutely real. You don't get punished in a financial sense for it. So the government has to step in and do something about it. Otherwise, capital interest there will drive the country into fucking ruin.
Marxist-Leninist.
I was going to say, we got a new arc.
Do you think maybe if you could just break down maybe the size of some of these companies? I mean, Facebook and Google and so on are really unique also in just how large and all pervasive they are. So maybe that's the problem that needs to be addressed.
The problem is you would assume, so the goal there is you would assume that competing like firms in a market would be competing on their truth or honesty, and that through market forces would dictate a success or restaurant. But the problem is you're not rewarded for telling the truth in this market when it comes to media. Media is not really journalism, it's entertainment. And what you get rewarded for is showing the most entertaining stories. So if I can show you a nuanced view of why we may or may not have a good presence into the Syria versus showing you a story about how you're like Hillary sold all of our uranium to Russia, I'm running to that with the Russia story 10 out of 10 times, and every single outlet will do it. Nobody wants to see fair and balanced media. Everybody makes fun of NPR. Nobody cares about that shit. They want to see fucking Trump screaming at a camera. They want to see Bernie saying, I wrote the damn bill. That's what they want to say, like, over anything else. Like, that's why anytime somebody else from another country watches American media, their first comment is like, dude, this is like fucking pro wrestling. Holy shit, your guys' shit is like amped up to fucking 12. Like, it's crazy.
I guess I just feel like, one, that I don't know how new that is in the United States.